A lot of people get into this mindset, hey, I did something and 10 friends liked it. And two of those friends are my parents. Now I'm a professional. No, you're still miles away from it. You've just gotten into the door, but there's still 10 million things you need to learn.
I think it's like so much of this stuff is like trying to remove the entitlement from the whole thing. You know, it's like you put in X amount of work and you feel like you deserve this paycheck or these accolades or whatever, and trying to remove that as much as possible. And again, just focusing on doing the job.
If I stopped there, I probably would have, the odds are, I would have stopped my whole career.
Hey guys, in this episode I'm joined by Whilce Portacio. If you don't know who he is one of the co-founders of Image Comics and overall one of the legends of 90s comics. In this episode we're talking a little bit about what he feels are the fundamentals of getting started in a creative career and the essential things that he feels like need to happen in order for someone to develop and kind of find their own way. And also, if you'd like to consider supporting me, please consider checking out the links below in the description. If you enjoy what I do and would like support, please consider checking that out. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, so I guess to start, the way that I usually start these things is the podcast is more like here to talk about like the why of doing art in the first place. You know, I think that when people are studying or when they're, you know, learning how to do this stuff, the actual learning the technique I think is relatively easy and straightforward, but finding a specific direction and kind of keeping it sustainable and all that kind of stuff, to me, that's the more difficult part. Like, you can learn how to draw the head in like 5 minutes technically, but then like drawing it for comics versus drawing it for illustration, and then also making a business off the back of that, that's an incredibly hard thing to do. And I guess I kind of wanted to talk to you and kind of get your thoughts and feelings on that.
Yeah, and people don't think about the fact that if you're lucky enough to survive in the business, the word boring can get in there.
Yeah.
Because there's only so many ways you can draw Superman.
Yeah.
Or any character. So you have to have something underneath to be able to, to keep hitting through. Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, often when I talk to people, everyone wants to draw comic books or work in concept art or any of that kind of stuff. But then there's a real tedium that goes along with it. It's like, it's not just fun, it's work. Like, and it's like you have your 40 hours that you have to put in for your normal job, but then often it's like 40 hours plus whatever else, even if you're successful, even if you have had a very successful career doing comics or anything in the arts. People don't intuitively right away get the fact that, that fact where you say, okay, here's my plot and it's going to take me this time, but you asked me to just do a commission of The Incredible Hulk. Yeah. I can do that right away. Because in one sit, you've got, this is what you have to do. Right. You know, this pose, this situation, this location, this action. But do a commission, the Hulk, okay, I can do whatever comes in my head. Right. It's easier. Everybody seems to think that's the more skilled part, and because you're doing it so quickly relatively. Right. But again, you're basically just farting out whatever you think and whatever you're comfortable with. When you're doing a plot, you can't. Right. You know, I want to draw the Hulk in this pose, but no, I need to do this action. And then I've had pages where it's already done up until one last little panel, just a throwaway thing. But I go on to the next page because I don't want to draw this boring little thing. Right. And days will go by sometimes where I could have finished that page 3 days ago, but I didn't. Yeah. Because, oh, wow, look at this next shot. You know, that's going to be fun. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with because they think it's fun. And it is, it can be, but it's like a job. Well, and part of this whole podcast is like removing some of the glamour and sort of the hero worship around the idea of being like a famous or professional artist. Because so much of this stuff is like, at least the people that I know that have become successful in their careers, they're the people that are I think, most able to acknowledge that 99% of the work is alone in your bedroom, just trying to grind out making good drawings. It's not the going to Comic-Con and selling out, signings or any of that kind of stuff. It's the work, Yeah. A typical thing is here you are, and days can be up to 8 hours, 12 hours, sometimes even 16 hours. And here, imagine, finish a big panel a big action, cool shot, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning,
right.
and you finish it, and and the whole world's asleep.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, okay, put everything away and go to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, there's, like I say, it's alone. So you don't have anything to go. That's why, you know, when it became, there was opportunity to form studios.
Right.
Everybody jumped at that. Because, you know, I could start getting sleepy in my studio, and if you're not disciplined, then you go to sleep.
Yeah. Right.
But if there's other guys around and they're doing, especially if they're doing some cool stuff, you're like, oh yeah.
Right.
And you pick up and stuff. Yeah. And I don't think people understand that. I don't really think people actually think about that.
Right.
Because even when you're young and you're trying to struggle in your own room, you don't remember the 10 hours that nothing happened and you're frustrated. You only remember the 15 minutes that was, oh man, and that's at the end of the 10 hours.
Right.
You know, but again, it's a job, and I almost think that without the perks that you get later on, where you've done a lot of work and you're sought after, I think it could get really, really heavy.
Yeah.
On you. You know, especially again, you know, like what I said earlier, you do something great, and there's just. You're just met with blank nothing,
right.
You know. So there's, I guess that's why, you know, like with the proliferation of conventions, because that is a reaction,
right?
That is the other side. I know a couple name artists that actually will live in the hotels.
Yeah,
you know, they'll just go from hotel to hotel, con to con, you know, and not want to go home.
Right.
You know, they'll then develop the discipline of, you know, doing the work in the hotel or a Starbucks or something like that. But, you know, that attention, that feedback, that could be killer. I mean, that could be.
It's so important. Well, I think again, it's so important that people find their why in the first place, because if most of it is going to be the tedious work, it's so easy to become nihilistic or discouraged by the lack of approval or reception, and trying to find a way to keep it sustainable emotionally, even in spite of all the work that you have to do. That's the way people are successful, you know?
You know, I say this a lot nowadays when people ask me what's the best, my best advice today to young artists, especially young professionals starting out. And I find myself saying a lot now, no matter what you do, no matter what job you take on, if you take a job on, and whether during the process of that job, you find out, oh, wait a minute, they're only paying me $1.
Yeah.
Or, you know, oh, I'm supposed to get paid today and it's been 3 weeks now, you know, or they're just idiot kind of people.
Right.
No one's going to know that.
Yeah.
And so if your work shows that, okay, you're such an asshole to me. Okay, here's asshole work. Your audience is going to go, oh, what happened?
Yeah. Well, they'll blame you as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's no way. I mean, I could get invited to almost every convention around the world. And even if I did, and I took it on my a mission to tell everybody what assholes these guys were.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. Right.
I can't. There's not enough time to do that. And who wants to sit through that?
Right.
What we already said earlier, everybody looks at the glamour side of this. They don't want to hear us bitching about negative stuff like that. So I tell everybody, no matter what job you take on, if you take it on, you got to go do 1,000%. I don't know how many jobs I've been given what a lot of people would consider a weak-ass costume.
Yeah.
It's not my job to bitch.
Right.
It's my job to make that costume look really cool.
Yeah.
You know, that's like when I first got on X Factor and I saw Bobby, Iceman, and it's kind of a little boring. Let me see if I can spice it up. Yeah. I did that just on a personal trip. Let me see, because, you know, it's going to be boring. if every time in my mind is a boring character, I'm going to have to draw this boring character. And so I go, okay, and let me see if I can make it interesting for me. I then later on learned that the fans loved it and editorial loved it. And, I'd gone up a notch, And then I learned from there, no matter how bad the story plot is, no matter how bad the costume is, no matter how bad the people are, if I'm going to say yes, take on the job because that's my resume.
Right.
People don't want to see your career go, okay, he started okay, and then he started rising, and then he got bad again, and then he started rising, and then he got bad. No, everybody wants to see you started as amateur, and you kept climbing and climbing, you got better and better, and then you retired.
Yeah.
That's the dream. That's what people want the story to be.
The ideal, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and again, I think it's like so much of this stuff is like trying to remove the entitlement from the whole thing. It's like you put in X amount of work and you feel like you deserve this paycheck or these accolades or whatever, and trying to remove that as much as possible. And again, just focusing on doing the job.
Yeah.
Like, if you're working on some book or some video game or something that is seemingly unimportant in the moment, you have no idea who's ever going to see it, Yeah. And I'm sure you have stories where you might have worked on a book that was like less popular in the moment, but then some famous person saw this unpopular book, and it might have led to other great things,
Well, I have a personal example where during the Uncanny Days, Suzanne Gaffney was my editor, and she is directly responsible for my Stormforge Kiss cover and for my Storm Crying in the Rain cover.
Yeah.
Okay, Now, people don't see the weight of that because they don't understand that all covers are action covers because it's primarily a male audience, especially back then. So to do a soft, quiet cover like this would be hard to get improved unless the editor actually instigated it. So when I did the Storm Crying in the Rain cover, that was just me and Suzanne going, she's gotten this reputation, Storm, as the Ice Queen. So how can we soften her? But since she's the Ice Queen, she can't do these crying emotional scenes. So how do we do that? And we came across her crying in the rain so that the shot is her in the rain. But if you look really closely, the raindrops are going like this and like gravity just falling straight down. But there's a couple that went crooked, falling the face. Those are her tears. And that's the only way an ice person can let out some emotion, where it's not obvious that they're doing that. Now, we did that just for Storm, just to try to show another side of Storm. But to this day, I go to conventions and people that are left out, people that are falling behind, people that have been pushed in this way or that because they're this minority little thing or LGBT.
Yeah.
They come to me and that cover to them doesn't mean what me and Suzanne originally intended, but because it could be interpreted like good art can be. Right. If you can interpret it from your personal point of view, then it means something. And that's the only real emotional reason to do artwork, to connect to an audience. And so I'm really proud of that cover because, like I said, we did it with this intent, and I believe we achieved that. And then as the years go on, the intent grows into morphing into different things. And I think that is... that gets you through a lot of negative thought that this is a job, I'm not getting paid as much, or they won't let me work on this or do it this way and stuff like that. But to be able to do something and then it lives on years and years past and it lives on in different ways.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the importance of just following the interest because, I mean, doing this podcast for me has been strange because it's kind of like highlighting to me how little you can actually control the reception of something, It's like I've recorded podcasts just like this in the same exact way that have gotten 200,000 views. In the grand scheme of podcasts, it's not a lot, but for me, it's like, wow, it just felt like a conversation, And you really, when you're doing a page, it might feel like, oh, this is just work, but then it goes and has this life beyond anything you could have ever expected. And on the other side of that, it's like there are also examples of video games or movies or any of that kind of stuff that had $250 million budgets that ended up failing or, not having that audience appeal in spite of it checking all the check boxes that you'd normally expect. And it's like, even on both sides of the spectrum, if it's a small scale operation or a large scale operation, you can't control the reception. So the only thing there is like, do you like it personally,
Yeah. And that is so important because, like in my musical, in my own personal travels of figuring out what music I like. Because I was a Navy bred on military bases, I was exposed to the Beatles and Elvis Presley. Mm-hmm. Now, if Elvis Presley happened in the 40s, he would have been arrested.
Yeah.
And that's not a joke, because in the 50s, they said they might arrest him. They filmed him from the waist up. They warned him not to do this or that. But if Elvis Presley came in 10 years after that, it would have been there, done that.
Yeah.
It is timing. And you're right that the only real solution there is to do it because you want to do it. Right. And find something in there. Like I said, even if the costume sucks, even if the story sucks, make it suck. That's what us image guys are known for. Here's these costumes, here's this story that if you read the plot, ho-hum, basic stuff. But we go, oh, that's kind of cool. What if we did this? Right. And that's the beauty of comics, because if you listen to how Stan and Jack did comics, which became the Marvel way, right? Back then, they would pick up a landline and say, Stan would go, hey, I got this idea for this story. And then Jack would go, oh, that's kind of cool. What about this? Oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. That means that we could go this way too. And then Jack would go, yeah, well, what about, okay, yeah, that's cool. I think we agree, right? Okay, cool. Phone hangs up. And then Jack draws what he remembers.
Yeah.
We didn't have emails that we could check back on and send, the plots through and print them out on your printer. It's just what Jack remembered. Yeah. Because we only had 4 weeks. And then so Jack would draw what he remembered, but he was such a disciplined professional that no matter what he drew was good storytelling, solid. Yeah. And the drawings were solid. So then Stan would take that, what Jack remembered, and instead of going, how come Jack forgot this, that, and that one? Oh, wait a minute. No, I've got a week to pump this out because the production's got to get it in a week. And so what he does is he takes what Jack gives him and he makes sure it works. Yeah. If there's something he forgot about, but he could put in just the writing, he'll put it in. If he can't, right, and it's awkward and it comes out confusing, he won't put it in. He'll just enhance what's there. And again, the whole point is once that is out there, even though Jack forgot this, this, and this, and even though Stan didn't want Jack to do this or that, the whole came out perfectly because they both didn't gripe about, both didn't bitch about, they just go, okay, this is it. How do I make it better? Yeah. And that's how Image was formed. How can we make it better? And we got into that because, Jim and I would get to the deadline, and we knew, because we knew the production people, we knew what the real deadlines are. All deadlines are padded. So we know what the real deadline were. And so, okay, if we did the deadline right now and handed it in, it's okay, it'll work. But I know there's 2 more days. And if I take those 2 more days to do that one big, cool ending splash, that would make it so much better. And I would take that because they couldn't step in. And I mean, what are they going to do with 2 days? Right. We've already done the work. So they have to let us go in. And again, with the model of Stan and Jack, okay, this is what wasn't 100% intended, but it's cool. Right. It's cool enough. It's cool. Because both guys, the whole production team, creative team said, okay, no matter what, we're going to just make it really cool. And that's what we did Image. anytime we got a character we didn't like, okay, make him cooler.
Right.
Every time we got a story that was only okay, we could have 3 more days. Okay, let me bump it up.
Yeah.
You know, with the action, with stuff that wasn't in the plot. You know, but I know I could do it here and stuff like that. And that's where you have to go, because you got to show who you are artistically. And a lot of times you don't know who you are artistically until you push yourself. Until you go, okay, I think I could do this, make this cooler. Let me put it in there. Okay, maybe the first time it's not cooler, it's just filler. But if you still believe in yourself and try it again the next time and the next time, and then it works and the audience reacts, then it's go, well, I just pushed myself. I've now just grown.
Yeah.
You know, and your editor's not going to do that because he's just worried about the deadline. Your writer's not going to do that. He's just worried about his words, you know, and everybody else down the line. So you've got to be able to and want to push yourselves. And so I'll always thank, to my grave, the few years that Jim Lee and Scott Williams and I were in an apartment here in Mira Mesa in Homage Studios. Because that, I believe it was 2 years, that 2 years of me and Jim going, oh yeah, you do that? Check this out. And then Jim going, oh, well, then check this out. And then me learning from his mistakes. I could see him, oh yeah, we were all morning talking about Hogarth or something. But he's not understanding. He's not getting it yet, this part. And I go, if I didn't have that mirror backing board of Jim, and Jim having me, and then having the third partner, Scott, those 2 years, the growth that we had in those 2 years could have easily on my own taken 4 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
Right.
Because there's no pushing. Here is pushing, and there's a goal to it to get better. And you could see, I mean, the whole psychological bit of me looking at Jim doing a beautiful splash and go, oh yeah, I could do better. That gives me that energy that by myself alone, I would have started watching TV or playing games.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's still in my head, but I'm not doing anything about it.
Right. Well, and I think that's the scary part for a lot of people, is the starting and knowing that you're going to fail, or knowing that you're going to make mistakes. And it's always strange to me talking to people who've done some iconic work or made some iconic images, because I'm surprised by how messy it is. You know, how it's not like, oh, I'm making a thing and it took me 3 hours to make. Sometimes that happens, but most of the time it's 20 hours of like, I tried this, oh, I have to redraw it, I have to erase it, I have to restart, I have to do all these different things. And I guess like that collaborative, or that sort of like almost like improv thing of just like you keep on carrying it through until it's finished, and kind of having faith that at the end there's like a light at the end of the tunnel that will make the whole thing worth it in the first place.
Yeah. And luckily for Jim and I, that was Scott Williams. Yeah. You know, because Scott was in the middle. So if Jim did something real cool, Scott would go, oh, wow, that's cool. And a lot of people don't know this, but even back then, even in high school, Scott was a high-end collector. Yeah. When we were in high school, he showed me Barry Windsor Smiths, you know, not pages, paintings. Right. You know, he showed me where this art form can go. So for Scott to go crazy over even a tiny panel that Jim did, I have to take notice. Right. Or I should, if I really want to improve and get better in my art, because he, as a collector and a connoisseur of art, is reacting to something that was just artistically done by, at this time, Jim. And so I go, so one, I would study it and go, and again, like before, remembering our conversation in the morning, because all three of us, we always talk process. Yeah. Always. When Sinkovich came in and started doing his crazy stuff, we examined that like crazy. We analyzed that crazy. So Scott to go crazy over something that Jim's doing and going, oh, he did this. That's new. Let me try that. Right. Again, by myself, I wouldn't see that. I wouldn't not only see that, but have the energy then and the push to then go, oh, I can now make that part of myself. I remember Jim going through hair. We went, there was a comic book store at the mall over here. And he went there, called everybody up, and got this list of everybody's 10 favorite artists. He went over there, bought as much of everything he could of the top 10. And then he just took it. He was a very analytical guy, and he took it one by one. Okay, here, hair. Draws Barry Windsor Smith, hair. Scott doesn't react. Okay, draws Jack Kirby, hair. Scott doesn't react. Draws Neil Adams, hair. Doesn't react. Frazetta, Miller, hair.
Right, that's it.
It's a keeper.
Yeah.
And then go on now to noses, go on to, and that's how we handled everything, again, because we had each other.
Right.
To mirror and to learn from. It was, you have to, as a aspiring artist, you have to learn from your mistakes. Too many people, like you said, alluded to earlier, take their mistakes as, oh, shit.
Right.
Mistakes means, okay, I'm definitely doing this wrong.
Right.
Okay, let me change it up. Let me try something else. Is that still wrong? Okay, it's still wrong. Try something else. Is that still wrong? That's still wrong. Try something else. People are reacting to it. That's cool. Okay. Now I know I can go to the next thing. See, that's the biggest thing I've learned in trying to train artists, and I've trained a lot through my 40 years, is you're in your bat cave doing this stuff. And because, like I said, you could do something real cool and you're real happy with it, but there's nobody to reinforce that. So you don't know what you're doing right.
Right.
So to have a professional artist that you look up to say, your hair's real cool. That's a keeper.
Yeah.
I do hair real good. So I'm going to do hair all over the place now.
Right.
That is such a push. That is the energy that you need.
Totally.
And getting that first recognition that you're not wasting people's time. Because especially as Asian people, you know, I've got to be a doctor, I've got to be a lawyer because my grades are straight A, so I got to do some of those things. But Mom, I want to do art. Well, give me proof, son. I like it.
Right.
That's not going to satisfy your parents. Yeah. But to have other artists like yourself, and what I actually did, I entered poster contests, book cover contests all over the place, yeah, and kept winning those. And they couldn't deny me that maybe this is my path there. But again, you got to prove it.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I've always tried to do. When I find somebody who has even beginning talent, I don't go into them saying, oh, well, see, you don't know this, and this. So let me give you all these pointers how to do this. No, I say, you can do this, and this really well. You've got talent. Right. You've got the beginnings. I saint you. I give you approval to keep going further. Yeah. Because again, life hits you. Oh my God, I got to take that job at McDonald's. Right. You know, nothing against McDonald's, but I got to tear myself away from art. Right. You know, and I think that is the most important thing. That's why this is a little side thing, but I went to Comic Kit last year in Japan at the end of December, and I was amazed because I was in Artist Alley, and it was what Artist Alley used to be at San Diego. You know, Artist Alley has through the years been cut down and cut down. It was the size of what it used to be. And then I find out while I'm there for that weekend, there's fucking 10 Artist Alleys. Right. 10 different halls. And then on the second level, that's where all the editors are. That's where all the companies are. So you got to make a big stink here and get fans to notice you. The word will get up here, and then you'll get an invite to show. Right. That is so important. I don't know why we don't do that here.
Yeah. Well, again, I guess it always goes back to that starting thing, is because I think that nowadays it's both extremely. It's much easier to get the word out that your art exists than it ever has been. But it's way more competitive than it's ever been, you know? And I guess it's been strange, again, doing this YouTube stuff and doing this podcast stuff, because it's like the more that I do it, the more positive feedback that I'm getting and the more energy I have in the fire to keep going and to try to do bigger things and to try to ask for more. And I feel like part of the, like, I've gotten into teaching people in the past couple of years and kind of helping people find their paths and kind of figure out their careers as artists. And the people who I know who are just starting out, I'm saying just like do anything, like just go to like enter a contest online, like join a local figure drawing class and just see who can make the best figure drawing. Like it doesn't matter what the scale is, it matters the passion behind the thing. And I think like again, my podcast has had very, very humble beginnings, starting in a van, driving around the country, crappy cameras, microphones, all that stuff. And it's growing and it's like, but it had to start out with me figuring it out, doing it badly first. Like it's way better to do to have a bad plan than no plan at all, because it's like, once you have a bad plan, then you can adjust and change to move towards a better plan,
Right. And that's, what underlines all art, whether it's sculpting, painting, or illustration, is you don't like the three lines that will denote, the under the lower lip, or the four lines up here. You don't go, okay, 4 lines, that works. I know that works. And then 3 lines. Oh, I know that works. No, it's the face.
Right.
The shape of the face. Is this a person with a long face? Is this a person with a wide face? Is it a person with a round face, a square face? And again, now that's also how then you remember how to draw different characters. But you start anything, sculpting, painting, with these broad strokes. And only until you get that down can you see, oh, okay, this side is not symmetrical to this side.
Yeah.
But, so if you don't have that there, all you got is virtual.
Well, like, comics are especially interesting too, because it's like, I think that name recognition is a big thing within comic stores, but also like you, who's been doing it for a long time, and someone who's been doing it for a couple of years, you're in the same market, same exact market. And it's like, how does someone stand out? And it's like, well, you have your experience and you know what people want and what people are looking for. And like, again, going to conventions is strange because you'll see people who are legendary comic artists, very, very successful, made a lot of money, have a lot of fans, sitting next to someone who is just starting out. And it's like, people will have a preference. The audience will have a preference, even if they've never heard of the person before. And more times than not, people will go towards the person with more experience because they have a closer idea of what people want. But it's like, it's not a difference in nepotism or talent or anything. It's more of it's things that people can go and learn and figure out, Like, I was talking to a friend of mine who does print sales at conventions. And over the years, he's built a strong business doing it. And like when he was first going to WonderCon, he would do okay. But now that he's learned how to like present his prints differently and how to like make stuff for the audience, like even instead of putting his prints down flat on the table and just having them facing up, that like made his sales go 3 times higher. And it wasn't a change in the art, it was a change in just the presentation, And that's the sort of thing you really don't learn until you've tried it and failed and, saw that in yourself to go and fix it.
That I could extrapolate that out into, again, to young artists making their way to become a professional artist. One of the things that I really push back against is this, in the last, 20 years, maybe even 30 years, since the technology has allowed you to do stuff. I mean, like your video editing and laying down, graphics onto your work and making it look professional. If you didn't have the money and the experience to be able to do that, you got to have the experience because, okay, I'm just going to give you $5,000.
Right.
No, it's got to be worth it. You got to show me that it's worth it, giving that. And then getting that editing suite or that software and stuff. 50 years ago, that was like,
they're $40,000 or $100,000. And then the computer. Yeah.
And you didn't even know what it was.
Yeah. Right.
There was no names bandied about. You didn't know which ones should you get or which ones, or if there were cheap professional brand ones,
Right.
Now it's easier to get into all that. But one thing I push back on is because it's easier to dabble, to start, to see if maybe you really are a creative. A lot of people get into this mindset, hey, I did something and 10 friends liked it.
Yeah.
And 2 of those friends are my parents.
Right.
Now I'm a professional.
Right.
Now, you're still miles away from it. You've just gotten into the door, but there's still 10 million things you need to learn to become real good. And like you said, to get noticed. And so we don't have it as much. But back then, we had a line of editors, and the editors were all failed artists, failed writers. So when they looked at your work, they kind of knew.
Yeah.
And they kind of knew how to direct you. And they kind of knew how to say, well, you should work on this. That's less and less happening. And that's just the job description of an editor today. It's mostly like everything else in business, social networking.
Yeah.
But and I think it's interesting. We are now seeing a more diverse, in terms of styles, artwork that's going around. But even a lot of the real interesting new experimentation, an experienced artist can see there's some underlying basics that are not being understood. And so we're seeing less and less artists that go on. I mean, I say it as a brag that I've been in business for 40 plus years. That's an achievement, that longevity. But you've got to figure out, like Elvis, you've got to figure out what you're doing. I really hate it when people say that every creative thing that was done really well was an artist who just followed their own path and only did what they wanted to do.
Right.
I really don't like, and they say if you try to follow the audience, you're copping out. You're selling your soul. And I just look at everything, every movie director, like a Scorsese. Are you going to see Scorsese do Disney animation? Probably not. Is he going to probably get excited about, okay, I wonder how old school gangsters, how are they getting by in today's modern world? Yeah. Do they feel left out, that nobody remembers them? And so, okay, he's probably going to do that. So what my point there is, every successful creative is because they understand their audience. Yeah. Stephen King, I've never really read a lot of Stephen King, but the few Stephen Kings I've had at fingertip, you could open up any Stephen King and that first paragraph, you will not maybe understand where the story is going, but you can visualize this character that's in that pattern, that he writes so vividly in terms of characterization and personality. Well, he learned that. How did he learn that? He learned it by studying you. Right. By saying, I remember the interviews of Scorsese saying that I forget where in New York, well, I'll just say, the Bronx. Here I am, the scrawny kid who was always sick a lot, and I was always stuck at the window because mom wouldn't let me play with the other kids. They said she said they were too rough and it would hurt me. And so some people think, oh, that's a little Scorsese just looking out and being jealous of everybody that's out there where he wants to be. He grew up to be a famous creator because he goes, there's the bully of the neighborhood. And then he goes, 3 months later, there's the bully of the neighborhood, but there's this group of people that really hate him. And I wonder why they hate him. Oh, they hate him because that thing that happened 2 weeks ago, and everybody's saying he was responsible for it. And then he goes, oh, look, but there's that other guy that he's always hanging around. Now he's not hanging around with that person. Did that guy have anything to do with that situation? Why people now are turning? he studied people. Now that he's studying people and cataloging all that in his head, not, this guy is a playboy, this guy is really shy, this guy is a pushover. Why is this guy playboy?
Right.
Why is this guy a pushover? And then he would, like a scientist, go, well, this is my first thoughts. Oh, that's wrong because of what just happened now today. And blah, blah. He learned his audience. And so when he writes, I bet you when he started writing, and he started writing what he thought was the cool things, the cool genre to write right now, but it wasn't what he was interested in and what he knew and understood from watching, it didn't connect to audiences. But the moment he started writing about the Italian community and specifically, the mafia side, what the little Goombas were doing and what happened to them through the years, that community understands that. And other people in other genres can understand all that other stuff around it. Even if you're not Italian, you could understand the mafia.
Right.
That's why the Godfathers, Coppola's Godfathers, was like the opening door to what Italian was. It wasn't just boom, bam, boom, and because these are mafia guys. Everybody can understand that. But if you look really closely, it was about traditions that the Italians wouldn't let go. It was about their food they wouldn't let go, that they were proud of. It was about thinking and remembering the old country, their culture. Right. And so everybody watched it because, oh, that's cool, gangsters, bing, bang, boom. And unconsciously, you're learning about Italian culture and how religious that was. That is a creative understanding their audience. So for them to be famous in writing Italian gangster things or Italian community and keep doing it, that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
No. You want to write, draw, sing, and it connects.
Right.
The only way to connect is because you know why this group of people like this.
And it could be anything.
It could be anything.
Which is crazy. It's like you can go to a supermarket and make a movie about an orange and make people cry,
Right.
And it's just an orange. And it's like, if you send Coppola or Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino into the same grocery store, same exact environment, same everything, they're going to make 3 different movies about that, about whatever, And it's not the environment, it's them. It's their ability to look at things, Something that I've talked about on the podcast before is like, if you look at a tree, that tree could be anything. It could be, to cut it down and make it into an oar or a spear, or it could become, a piece of wood for a house, or maybe it's just a decorative tree or whatever. And it's like who you are, where you're from, that determines what that thing is going to be, and I think a lot of the creative process is almost like listening to whatever that question is. It's like when I say, I'm going to draw a picture, I'm going to, I like superheroes and I like orcs and knights and swords and stuff, But if you ask someone else to draw a picture, they might draw a Disney princess, or they might draw a landscape or something. But it's like, but you could be successful at any of those things. And I guess it's your ability to execute on that thing and to kind of listen to yourself.
Yeah, to connect.
Yeah.
That's the whole real thing there, connecting.
Yeah.
Always asking why. Never just taking, this big, rough, dumb maluka of a guy. He's probably going to become a criminal and get arrested a lot. Oh, look, he's getting arrested a lot. Okay, that's because he's stupid.
Right.
Why is he this big maluka?
Right.
Why is he always getting arrested? Maybe it's because everybody expects him to go on the quote-unquote bad path. And one thing that us creatives learn about human nature is 99% of humans do the easy thing.
Yeah.
We rarely take the hard path. They will do the easy thing. So maybe this big hulk of a guy didn't have the brains. Okay, so they're right that he was stupid. But he thought, okay, hey, can you help me knock this person off, or knock this bank off, or, knock on this grocery store? Oh, okay, I think I can do that. He gets into that, and now he's on this pathway going this way, and doesn't even know he's on that path. But see, as a writer, if you're asking why, if you're a creative person asking why, you could see that.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, because my whole family, when I learned all of the ins and outs of my whole extended family, and I don't know everything still, but when I started learning a lot of it, I could write sitcoms about my family, about what they did and they didn't do. And so there were so many different kinds of personalities. And I watched them all. So I didn't have to make the mistakes that they made.
Yeah.
Like, I had an uncle who was charismatic and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I learned later on that when you're a guy and you're charismatic, you get a lot of attention from women. What's going to happen if you're married? You might do this and get off the path because the opportunity is there. If you get off the path and people find out, especially if your wife and your kids find out. So I started watching my uncle and going, wow, he's such a cool, charismatic person. Everybody loves him. To the time years ago where his son was my best friend. And his son hated his dad.
Yeah.
And his sister hated his dad. And one day I go to the house looking for my friend to hang out with. And mom's there saying that he's not there. And all of a sudden she burst out in tears. And I find out later on that the kids came home one day and they found dad.
Yeah.
You know, and then I go, wow, I could, as a creative writer, always asking why. Oh, so that's probably what happened.
Right.
And this is probably why it happened. And then so I ain't going to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think everyone has, you know, stories they could either pull from their life or an experience with tragedy, you know. I think that art is inherently painful, you know. It's like there's the tedious element to it, but then there's also the, you know, trying to tell and make stories that people resonate with. Every story has a moment where people are feeling hopeless or depressed, and that's often coming from someone's own personal life. Like, I you know, speaking of boring scenes that are great pieces of storytelling, in Everywhere, Everything All at Once, when the daughter and the mother are rocks in the canyon, it's like, you know, that's a very deep, you know, these two parts of culture, you know, people live that story, you know, pushing up against each other, identity and freedom and all that kind of stuff. But it's being told through this sort of ironic, you know, like funny way, but it's still a very gripping and emotionally difficult thing to kind of come to terms with, you know. But it's literally two rocks placed next to each other being filmed with voiceover, you know.
See, that's one of the interesting things that really keep my interest in writing and in asking those questions of why. It's because, like, when I started watching Star Trek, the original series, I understood right away that, do you remember that episode where you had Frank Gorshin, who was this great comedic actor, but he was a little kind of on the villain side. He was smirky. Well, he was an alien with half of his face painted black. Yeah. And then he truly hated this other guy whose other side of his face was painted black.
Right.
And so they were mortal enemies. And that's what the whole episode about. What is Kirk going to do about mediating in between? Can he? And I very early understood that could have been trying to deal with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or the Indian and, you know, the American Indian and the Calvary conflict, or black and white conflict. And I understood right away, by doing this, they were talking about serious stuff that they really felt and that they were maybe even really experiencing. But if they actually made it not about one person and one person like this, but they made it about real people that other people knew, well, as we're experiencing in the Western world right now, tribalism, no matter what you're saying, let's say it's a good thing you're saying, you're trying to pull out some inspiring things from that. one side will never see that.
Right.
And the other side will only see that. And so science fiction has always enticed me because you could take real thoughts in your head, real things that mean something to you, but use metaphors or use stand-in characters that visually don't seem to connect to what you're saying. And what's beauty about that is you can start espousing what your thoughts are and tie it to like events that really happen. But because it's this made-up world, it takes the audience a little bit of time to understand, wait a minute, you're talking about, because again, if I know you're talking about this, then I have a thought on one side of it or not. And that little pause allows people to, in the best of times, to pause a little and really think about it. Not think about the tribal, okay, whose side am I on? But, okay, you know? And that is what comics is all about.
Right.
You know, every single character is, you know, a lot of people don't remember. Superman was created for a reason. Every 30, 40 years or so in America, for my writing, I've studied Americana. Every 30, 40 years ago, we get through this phase where we forget we're all immigrants.
Yeah.
And the people that have been there longer than the new people that got there, they start saying, no, we're the real Americans. And they start discriminating against the people who, that's why we got fresh off the boat and phrases like that. Well, every 30 or 40 years, we go through that. So people forget Superman's an alien.
Yeah.
He comes from a place that he can never go back to, that he never grew up in. He just has these videotapes, these crystals, to see kind of what maybe it was like and what his dad was like. And the whole real story of it, which is why it started with Grandma and Grandpa Kent, and then his dog, and then his local girlfriend, you know, and then later on it got comical with, you know, the Wonder Twins and stuff like that. But the whole point of all that was, here is an alien, and he's assimilating into Americana. Yeah. And then he decides, because he now figures out he's got this strength, this power, and there's a responsibility to that. He goes, instead of getting mad and flying off into space and trying to find his homeland or try to find a remnant of it, he decides, I owe so much to the planet Earth here. I'm going to become the champion of the planet Earth, of humans. Right. That's the story people forget. He was made to try to buffer some of that in America at the time. You know, we were trying to say, here's the best of us, and the best of us, guess what? We're immigrants. Right. You know, and people forget that Batman was created because the justice system at the time in America was just falling apart. Right. I remember this beautiful movie with Humphrey Bogart where they built this neighborhood set. And there was the rich kids over here, and then there were the poor kids over here, and then there were the middle-income kids over here. And here was Humphrey Bogart coming back to the neighborhood, and he made it. But he made it as a gangster. But, you know, he had money, and he was dressed up real good, and people in the neighborhood were looking up to him as somebody that got out of it. Well, the whole story was nobody was safe. Yeah. The rich kid wasn't safe, even though they could pay for protection. Because he was a protection gangster, you know, and whichever side he went on. So the point was, it wasn't safe for anybody. And so that's then why we go, okay, maybe we do need to change the definition of a hero, that it's not all just what's right or wrong. Right. Somebody that could cross the line. And this is another thing that people forget, and I have it because, you know, I'm a writer and always asking why, is that, okay, how do we get over that? How do we prop up a hero that is not by definition really a hero? He's a vigilante. And especially back then in America, vigilante was a bad word. We went through the whole West of, the townspeople, doing the wrong thing just because there was a stranger in town, or the Frankenstein story. That's what a big part of the mob thing. So we've, at that point, got away from that. And so the thought of a vigilante hero, well, think about it. Okay, how do we get through that? We have his parents murdered in front of him. And who are the parents murdered by? The Joker. And how do we define and make the Joker, create the Joker? The most sadistic person that you would ever not want to know. He was just totally demented, and that's how he's lived through it. So he was giving us a reason for allowing a vigilante to become a hero, because somebody's got to take care of that. Because in our everyday lives, we see the world going crazy. And then, in the 40s, Nazi,
right,
German and stuff. So we see evil is real. And so we want a hero to push back against that. But again, if we didn't do all that, if we didn't create this demented character, that's called a Joker even.
Right.
He doesn't care about anything. He's a psychotic. And young Bruce Wayne witnessing that, and that's why he turns into the vigilante. Who can't understand that?
Right.
So many people have gone through the depression and everything, and even racism and stuff. They can understand that, and so that's what's the most interesting thing for me in following comics throughout history. It's not just, hey, wouldn't it be cool? There's always that.
That's step one, right? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, right. But there's a trillion other steps after that make it interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you pitch Spider-Man or Batman or Superman, it's like, what, Batman? Like, that's like turtle guy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do you mean? Like, but it's like it's the context around it, everything surrounding it that makes it interesting. Like, I think Spider-Man is the most popular superhero ever, right? And I think it's just like a 16-year-old kid that has the ability to climb on walls and swing and like, I guess, super strength. But it's like the interest there is Uncle Ben dying, and him having trouble with his girlfriend and being fired from his pizza job while also trying to save the day, And it's like people can relate to the, like, trying to, like, have a relationship with your girlfriend and getting fired from your job way more than they can being the superhero,
Yeah. If I remember right, Stan told me that this was the 60s, and he started doing college tours because the college kids that started reading Marvel comics were growing up and now going to college.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other data point you have to put in there, this is the 60s. So this is a generation that was born 20 years later in the aftermath of World War II.
Yeah.
And enabled because of the GI Bill. So we enabled all those soldiers coming back and realizing, thinking, we train all these people, these young 18-year-olds to kill. Now they come back and that's all they know how to do.
Right.
We're in trouble if we don't do anything about that. So we created a GI Bill, gave an incentive for housing and jobs and blah, blah, blah. And so therein started our first generation that's going to become a college professional.
Yeah.
And so the joke now is Asians will do this, but that was the first generation in America. That generation going into college in the 60s, where you're going to be the first in the family to become a professional, a real person.
Right.
So Stan said he noticed that those kids were really enthused about comics because they grew up with his comics. But he realized a lot of them were not antisocial. They were just concentrating so much on making their parents proud and learning that they forgot to learn how to, like you said, meet the girl next door that they have a crush on.
Right.
And so, and then at that time, and this was really being pushed, the nerd thing. Remember, broken glasses, there's tape here, and then all the, the pens and stuff. And they were always the laughing stock. They were always the sideway, throwaway character. Well, Stan goes, what if I make them a hero?
Yeah.
And keep all their quirks? Like, again, he can't. it's hard for him to talk to Mary Jane. And he also, and this is a brilliant too. Again, when you ask why, and you go and you get the answer, you can go into the details. Have you noticed that when he has his mask on, then he's the wisecracking guy.
Yeah.
But you take off the mask, he's the shy guy again.
Right.
Because he could hide behind the mask. And that was a very important part of his personality.
Similar to Superman too, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, no, but understanding those little things about psychology, about how people really are, you put that into your work.
Right. Well, and I'm sure it's strange for people that have been in comics for a long time, because comics for a long time, that's what dorks read. You know, that's what dweebs read, and now it's become the mainstream. Like the most most popular movies of all time are comic book movies. You know, and it's like I think it's like even if the thing that someone is doing might feel like unimportant or not popular or not a good idea in the moment, that does not mean that at some point in the future it's going to have some audience that's going to really, really care about it in some really meaningful way.
Yeah. I actually add something to that, because let's envision a world where Stan didn't go to universities and didn't notice that this generation was growing up not really understanding social cues. And then him having the thought of, what would a hero be like if they were a nerd?
Yeah.
Let's say he didn't do that. Would we have generations now growing up wanting to grow up as a nerd?
Right. No, maybe not, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah. So it's not just that there's the thought out there and it could be, you know, written down and observed, but somebody has to actually take that and make it connect. Yeah. You know, like you could take all that and write a novel that's kind of like Peyton Place and stuff that has this dark side and stuff like that. But it never has the nerdy character becoming a hero.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, if it's written well, people will have read it, but you wouldn't have inspired a generation to want to become that nerd and to feel that nerds are people too. In fact, they're cool people. You know, it takes somebody like Stan and
Kirby?
Steve Ditko.
Yeah.
To take all that reality, all those data points, and make it understandable and digestible. Look at the incarnation of Spider-Man today. Yeah. None of us would have thought about that. For us old pros, oh no, Spider-Man's already made.
Right.
Yeah. But then to live through seeing him change and then now becoming where society is going and understanding that's cool.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, and again, it's like people will take the thing that you're working on and make it something that's completely not yours anymore, you know? And I think it's like you make the thing and you just let it go out and exist in the world and whatever, you know, like not being tied again to the outcome, just like doing the work because it's important to you and hoping that you're able to pay the bills because of it, you know? Like for this podcast, for me, it's like, I want to have these conversations. Like the success point for me is as long as we got to sit down for an hour or 2 hours or whatever and have a conversation, then it's already success. Anything else after that is like, oh, cool, it got 30,000 views or whatever. That's great. But like looking at that, just having had the chance to do it as the successful thing keeps it way more sustainable for me because I can just keep doing it, you know?
Well, I really, truly need that has to happen more. The diving in. Yeah. You know, more and more creatives pointing out that Superman actually was the template for a immigrant superhero and where the roots of Batman come from and other characters. Because I started with film. I wanted to be a film director.
Right.
I couldn't afford LA Film School, so I kept just drawing. and then got into comics. Now, if I didn't, if I just, I'll go to another one. If I stopped there because comics, no, that's not where I want to go.
Yeah.
If I stopped there, I probably would have, the odds are, I would have stopped my whole career.
Yeah.
Because only, years in of being a successful comic artist did I have the money to go to film school.
Yeah.
And so maybe I would have gone to film school, but without that, I probably would never have had the money to go into film school. And I didn't have enough friends that were in film and had, 16 millimeter cameras and time to burn and to be able to try out that stuff. So you got to keep going. You got to keep doing what, it's a corny phrase, but you got to write what you know.
Yeah.
And then if you know it because you've observed it enough and you put it out there, like you said earlier, it can grow into what it needs to grow into. I bet you Scorsese and them guys, or even Mario Puzo when he wrote The Godfather, didn't see it going where it went.
Yeah.
But it had to go where it went. And it could only go where it went because the little data points were real.
Right.
That people really could connect to and say, yeah. That's what it's like and what it's really like. Like for me as a Filipino, that's the thing I'm always searching for, because I truly believe that if Mario Puzo didn't write the story of a mafia family, and that mafia heritage came from, back in the old country, a godfather of people that they relied on to help fix problems, and he was transporting that to New York. I truly believe that if that wasn't started, that book, that wouldn't have inspired Coppola.
Yeah.
And it would have inspired Scorsese. And I bet you when even Coppola and Scorsese were doing their thing, they didn't really understand where it was going. To take another turn, going across the ocean to Akira Kurosawa and Toshiro Mifune. A lot of people don't know this. When Akira Kurosawa was doing his movies and he was painstakingly trying to do what real life in Japan was like, Japan hated that.
Yeah.
Japan just wanted to put out this image that everything's perfect and clean.
Right.
And look at all the characters that Toshiro did. They were out-of-the-box characters, right, which are now standard characters and stuff. But back then, especially, it was no. But they kept to their guns and they kept following it where it went. And Toshiro himself then went from, okay, I'm going to be the rebellious young Turk, to I'm trying to fit inside society and trying to make this work.
Right.
And again, that's the fun of art.
Right.
But you got to ask the questions why, and you got to find those answers.
And you have to be okay with the mistakes too. It's like part of the appeal recording this podcast for me is like getting the chance to talk to somebody who's, done something in their career or whatever. Just having an interesting conversation with somebody. But it's like it's awkward. There's ums, there's buts. It's not just clean.
Yeah.
There are moments where I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or I'm saying this in a really awkward way, but that's actually how conversation actually is. It's not just reading a book and then getting information. It's like, oh man, this is me figuring out something on the spot. It's not exactly what I thought it would be, but it is something new or something unexpected,
You know how important that is?
It's the most important thing.
It's the most important thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and to put it in context, and this was a Pixar guy. I was told he was one of their story teachers, okay? And he had a take on what stories are that I have grabbed onto it ever since. Storytelling equates to conversation. Okay, so like imagine us as cavemen, and it's a drought. but we know there's this water hole over there. And we go over there, and when we're like 30 feet from it, we could see some bones.
Yeah.
And so the smarter of us was like, those look like human bones. And then we look across the water hole, and there's a pack of lions.
Yeah.
What's the story there? Maybe these pack of lions have learned to stay at the water hole because humans and other animals will come and they can just pick them off.
Right.
So here's the conversation. Is there anybody here in our group could figure that out? And is there anybody in our group going to come to the conclusion, maybe that's what the story is. Maybe that's what reality is. Or is one of the stronger ones going to go, but I'm fucking thirsty.
Yeah. Right.
And they go there and they get killed.
Yeah.
And now there's nobody to pass on that story.
Right.
You know, and so that's why one of the cornerstones of Pixar is you have all these directors and they all have stories that they want to do. And they spend most of their time going, dude, I got this story. Let me tell you about it, okay? And it's just a conversation. Now, if you start getting lost or you start getting bored, I know my story's not ready.
Yeah.
But if I tell you my story later on after I fix it, because I'm listening to that, and you just are stuck to it.
Right.
You're paying attention. So then I go to another friend of mine. And if I can get like a huge group of friends of mine that love that version of the story, I'm communicating.
Right.
That story can be written and that story can be produced. It's all just conversation. If you can't explain your idea in conversation, your story idea is too complicated.
It's dead in the water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no point to it. There's no thrust to it yet. You haven't figured out what it really means and what it's really trying to say.
Right.
You know, and that is just a simple conversation.
Right.
People, that has once I was told that, I then looked at all these other stories, and that is true. You could take your favorite movie, favorite story, favorite comic book. In a very short time, you could explain it to a friend. And if you're creative enough to say it clearly and concisely, they'll get the fever.
Yeah.
And that's how stories last through decades and hundreds of years. Because look at all the stories, like King Arthur, or even fairy tales like the Three Little Pigs and stuff. Come on, Three Little Pigs was a kid's story way back when by the Grimm brothers. But how can we still remember it?
Star Wars is just King Arthur, right?
Exactly.
That's literally just King Arthur, right?
Right. Well,
I think the thing there for me too is like, even if you make the best thing, you will never be able to hit 100% of people liking your thing, Yeah. Which is crazy. It's like, even if you look at the most popular comics or movies or songs, I would say that most people actually don't know or don't like that thing,
See, that's my fundamental problem with AI.
Yeah.
AI, if you're a real tech person, you totally understand that AI is computer algorithms that can understand how to collate what is there.
Yeah.
But if there's nothing there, they can't collate that. So what that means is they could come up with a story based on this stuff, the database. But can they come up with the next Star Wars? Remember when Star Wars came out, it was George Lucas and he was going, yeah, Star Wars is this movie I hope everybody watches. It's a space opera, because they're always pushing you to come up with phrases, right? So space opera. I remember those times. Space opera. So that means this is like the days of our life in space. It didn't make any sense.
Right.
But then after we watched the movie and we listened to George Moore, we understood what he meant by space opera. Right. And that got everybody grabbed that.
Well, even for Star Wars too, it's messy. It's like Luke kisses Leia. That's like he didn't plan that at all. It was like, okay, I guess they're going to be in love, and then he's like, oh, what if they're brother and sister, and what if Darth Vader is Luke's dad? And it's like, but that was planned as they were making the movies.
That's the greatest thing about a creative who spends their young life observing and understanding and asking why, because I can bet you millions of dollars that George didn't have in his head this phrase that is really popular today. That's a big thing today. Found family.
Yeah.
Right? That's everybody. That's what everybody's about now. Found family. I don't need to, which I don't believe is right, but this is the way society is. I don't need to look at my inner circles.
Right.
I could find the perfect family for me that I could be perfectly fit in from a found family in my life. George didn't have that phrase in it. I could bet you Miller, he didn't have that phrase in his head. He barely even had that thought.
Yeah.
But, okay, my main character is an orphan. And he's an orphan because, hey, I need somebody to try to redeem the worst person in the universe.
Right.
Who will never stop trying to redeem the worst person in the universe? An orphan.
Right. Yeah.
Who grew up in his life thinking he didn't have a father, but now all of a sudden he's got a father, a found father. There's no way he's going to leave that alone. Yeah. Okay, so he has to be an orphan. And so that has to happen. And so because he's an orphan, and he only has Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, but you could see they don't really connect.
Right.
And he only has aspirations to get away. And what kid doesn't understand that, getting out of your town and stuff? Right. So how is he going to learn? George had the understanding that he can't just stand alone. How is he going to learn how to, because we're social people. It's a group that helps you get through that. Okay, yeah, he's going to first find Obi-Wan, but that's just a father figure. But see, he has his real dad. So he doesn't, you notice how in the movie, they don't really make it point out that he is the first father figure for Luke, because we're going to go here, And then, so let's put it all together. So big sister, okay, there's that weird thing of, having crush. But see, it's not so much in this generation, but back then, you learn your first emotional romantic cues from your relatives. Yeah. If you're a guy, your aunties. If you're a girl, your uncles. They were the only safe people to, you knew, or you hopefully knew that they weren't going to step over the line, but you could experiment and try to see what a relationship is like and be safe with them. And so that's why you had, favorite uncles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so you had Big Brother. You never had a big brother. And then his pet dog, and then you have the girl that becomes your sister, but she's your older sister. And so you grew up, mom and my sister are the most beautiful people in the world. Right. But then you find out, okay, now I want to get my own. And so there was that whole found family. And I bet you he wasn't thinking about it in those stark terms that we think about it today.
No.
But he had that instinct knowing that here's my lone character and I want him to redeem this found father, but he needs backup.
Right.
He needs to learn. And so let me put a family around him. And he goes to those templates of what a family is.
Right.
Big brother, big sister, my dog that I can always rely on and stuff. It's interesting. He never really did the mother thing.
Yeah.
But that is exactly what he did. And it's because he kept asking why. So he didn't, like you said, he didn't really know where he was going there and what it would turn out to be in the vernacular today. But he figured it out.
Right. Yeah, totally.
He figured it out.
And it's like starting with one thing and just doing yes and. Like, oh, what if this guy's in the desert? What if, why is he in the desert? What's the origin story? And just keep going until it's Star Wars or Dune or anything, And I think it's the same thing with drawing or learning how to do any skill. It's like if you want to make drawing a habit, you start by doing one stroke on a piece of paper. Even if you're struggling or burnt out or you don't know where to start, just start doing it. You know, it's like there's parallels between trying to create a story like Star Wars and just doing your first head drawing or something, Because again, if you look at any piece of popular fiction in the last ever, I guess, there's mistakes. Like something I've been talking about on the podcast a lot is when Legolas and Aragorn and Gimli meet the Riders of Rohirrim for the first time, so they meet Karl Urban's character. When Karl Urban gets on his horse, his sword falls out of the sheath and no one notices, you know? And it's like, it's still in the movie. It's like, you could look it up, just like Riders of Rohirrim sword drop. And it's like, it just falls out. And it's like, in this movie that's won a trillion Oscars and Emmys, and it's critically acclaimed and still popular today, and all this media is made about it. And there's still messy parts to it, you know?
Well, do you remember back to all those behind the scenes of Star Wars?
Yeah.
You know, where Harrison, Carrie, Luke, and I think there's even clips of Alec Guinness. Yeah. And George says, cut. And they go, well, and George goes, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And we're going, I mean, the point there is, how confident were we of this new young director?
Right? No, not at all. Right? It's like no one knowing well, it's like people's you know, like there are just like mistakes throughout that movie. If you ask Harrison Ford about any of those guys what it was like recording it in the moment, it's like, we thought this is just a paycheck for us. You know, it's just a one-off. Like, this is direct to TV.
Well, you could even go back to. Which is why I love asking why and getting those questions answered. You look back at the first Iron Man, and if you remember the context of that time, okay, we now have Batman, and it was a hit, but arguably, right?
Yeah.
And it still hadn't yet blown over to the rest of the audience, the
world. Yeah.
And here is Robert Downey Jr.
Unexpected, right?
Accolades and stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like if you put yourself in the perspective of Robert Downey Jr. in like 2008, he's like a criminal to a lot of people. He's sketchy.
That's my point.
Yeah.
He's grade A actor,
right?
Oscar, but this is his third time in rehab,
right? Yeah.
And nobody wants to touch him.
Exactly. Yeah.
And no serious actor, especially if you're Academy grade,
right,
wants to downgrade themselves by doing a science fiction fairy tale.
Right.
You know, it's like going and doing TV show.
A comic book movie.
Yeah.
A
comic book movie. But this was his third rehab, and you know, like on Charlie Chaplin, he fell apart.
Yeah.
You know, and so he couldn't be trusted, and nobody wanted to insure him and give him another chance. So he had no choice but to take this silly thing, because it's the only. It's arguably probably the only thing that would pay him anywhere close to what he usually gets. Yeah. And then it turns out to be the biggest tsunami wave of his entire career.
Yeah,
you know, you look back at almost everything. Alec Guinness taking on the Obi-Wan Kenobi role. Right. This is a triple grade artist, and he's not been a triple grade for 10 years. At this point, he's like, 40, 50 years already, and he is Sir Alec Guinness at this time. To get him to do this role, you know, in some interviews, he says he didn't want to do it, but then he read it, and he loved the storytelling. Yeah. In other interviews, like with Alan Ladd Jr., who was the one who got Lucas the money, he convinced, 20th Century to give him a chance. He saw something in George. And then because it's so interesting, the whole story. I mean, George, Coppola, Spielberg, they all come out of film school together at the point where the studio heads were leaving and it was becoming a business. Yeah. So now they had the money, but nobody was a creative. They back then, Selznick, who would read something and go, that's really cool, we have to do this. Now they were all businessmen. And so that's when they started out with Alan Ladd spearheading it. Let's go to LA Film School and let's take the graduates there and let them experiment. See if they can come up with the next stories that we need to do. And Coppola was ahead of that. He was the oldest one and the more more disciplined one. And Georgie was his little baby brother kid.
Yeah.
And so Alan Ladd goes to Coppola and he says, you know, I really believe like you with George, but nobody else wants to listen. Yeah. So what can we do? And then Alan goes, well, make him do a serious drama movie.
Yeah.
Okay. And he goes to George and Coppola goes, hey, do me a favor, make a cool, interesting drama. Do it about things you know about, and that'll prove it. That'll prove to the bigwigs that you should get some money and be trusted, and then you can do whatever you want.
Right.
So he goes, okay, I like cars. I like speed. I love the 50s. American Graffiti.
Yeah.
Instant cred then. And that's where he gets the money to do that stuff. And it's just interesting. Look at all those little things that had to happen.
Right.
Imagine if Selznick and the other studio had stayed.
Right.
Coppola would never have been discovered, recognized.
Yeah.
Because he's just a graduate.
Right. Well, and those little mistakes are those little things that force someone's hand.
Yeah.
Like that's the magic. That's like, it's almost like the restrictions that you have in your own life, you know? It's like, that's what makes it interesting. And I like something, and I apologize to people who might be listening. I mentioned this a lot in this podcast where it's like, if I started out in this whole thing with like, I have a great studio, producers, I have like all the opportunities in the world to have advertisers and amazing guests, I wouldn't have followed through with it because it would have been too much pressure, you know? And it's like starting out kind of janky in a van, like broken cameras, all this stuff. That's the only way I really could have done it, you know, or at least the way I keep doing it. Cause it's like, it's interesting to me. I could do it at my own pace. I could like experiment with stuff. And it's almost like if it were exactly what I would want, if I had infinite money to fund it from the very beginning, there's just too many things for me to push up against, too many expectations for what it could be, you know?
Well, also that rich kid thing.
Yeah.
You know, well, if it fails, then somebody will pick me up anyways.
Yeah.
So there's no push.
Right.
You know, well, no personal push to persevere and go and explore new avenues.
Yeah. Well, it's always that, you know, it's like, if somebody sits down and tries to make comics for 10 years and they do it in the right way and all that stuff, it's like they might not be able to make a living from it or they might not be successful from it, but they'll at least be able to make something that somebody else will resonate with, you know? And it's like, I don't know what that even means, like actually turning that into something that is sustainable, but it's like at least you were able to make something that someone else cared about, you know? But you don't get there without that, like, I guess the hoping for it or the incentives, the why, like we were talking about in the very beginning of the conversation, you know?
Well, you know, because we could spend decades talking about problems of Hollywood, but one of the great things about American entertainment and showbiz is that we allow that flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, there are some people now saying that, oh, everything is just geared towards superheroes. Right. You know, and so they're missing the boat on other things. Well, there was a time when everybody was geared on just Nickelodeon slapstick comedy, which came from vaudeville. And then there was a time where it was just dance, you know, Fred Astaire's and stuff. And then it was horror movies and stuff. And then there was, you know, oh, it's never going to be worth it to make a science fiction movie or a sequel to a popular movie. Yeah. And then Jaws comes out. You know, space is never going to work. Sci-fi is never going to work. But then Star Trek and Star Wars comes out. We have in us that flexibility to maybe see other things because I think at the base, it's the audience that dictates that. And if you look at our history with Image proved to me, I love history. And so in my younger years, up until now, I've been trying to figure out how did Germany become Nazi Germany? Okay. And I've always come to the conclusions, and it especially started to click when Image happened. And I know punk Rob, you know, punk, you know, Todd, and the fixated on a green fin guy, Eric, who some people saw as not really serious. We weren't powerful people.
Yeah.
Hitler wasn't a powerful person, but millions of people gave us that power. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that we learned from George Lucas, because, there's those famous stories of the first Star Wars movies where he didn't take his directors and producers' pay.
Yeah.
He just asked for, merchandising dividends. And he understood that there was an audience growing. And Star Wars was the first thing that really grew an audience. I mean, back then, it's, movie comes real popular, people love it, and you get an Academy Award maybe.
Yeah.
But you didn't even go on
to do anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
And then get all this merchandise and have it extend even without a movie.
Right.
And so we saw that. And the way we saw that was that, like, I remember Jim and I going to San Diego Con, and, there's the huge line, we're signing stuff. And also we noticed these kids with our drawings on their t-shirts, their X-Men drawings. And it wasn't 20 kids with the same one or two drawings.
Yeah.
It was 20 drawings on different shirts. And then I forget who it was, but somebody looked at the label and saw the company name. And so we did some research, found out they were making money. And I won't go into the details, but basically Marvel's reaction was, that's small fry.
Right. No,
that's nothing.
Huge. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like, it's I see yours and Jim's stuff in like Hot Topic now. It's weird, it's like, but again, in the moment, you really don't know. It's like the same thing with, Paul McCartney thinking, the Beatles collection is like $2 million and it sells for 50, and now it's worth well over billions at this point.
So it even really predates George Lucas. I mean, think about the conversation you're in the studio doing. I forget what the album was. And then, you're taking a break, having lunch in the little cafe next door, and you're looking out. If you've ever been in that area, it's just a nice residential area where Abbey Road is. And then you look out, and they look out there. Think about the conversation. Think about it meaning something, anything to you, when one of them says, maybe we should take a promo picture of us walking across the street.
Yeah.
Who's going to know what this street is?
Right, yeah.
But they had the forethought to know this studio is getting popular. A lot of the top dogs are following us into this studio, and they want to record this. And everybody on the inside know it's Abbey Roads.
Yeah.
And, it's named after the street.
Yeah.
And here's a crosswalk that's just 40 feet from the studio.
Yeah.
It's not going to take us any time to do it. And it's just a simple picture of us walking the street. And if people react, people react. If they don't, it's just a stupid little picture.
Yeah.
But I have to think that at least one of them, if not all of them, had a little bit of a thought.
Right.
This is actually recording history because
huge.
This is happening.
Yeah.
And it became massive. Yeah.
I feel the same way about YouTube now, because it's like when I look at my own viewing habits and the way that I consume media, it is not Netflix, it's not Amazon Prime, it's 95% YouTube. It's like Outdoor Boys or Mr. Beast, or you can go down the list of any number of creators who become mainstream popular people just by making videos alone in their bedroom or just with other people. And I think that, like, moving forward, it's like the accessibility. I was talking to Ryan Benjamin about this, where like every second or third person would come up to him and be like, "Oh, I saw your Proco video," or something, and it's like, that's amazing. It's like, he can go anywhere in the United States, and I think all around the world at this point, be recognized from a video he did on Proco a couple years ago. And it's like,
I totally agree with you. And I'll give you an example that's totally left turn to that.
Yeah.
So I'm a Filipino, and I've been in the United States for 62 years now. So I was born in the Philippines, but when I was 2, I moved over here.
Yeah.
And never really went back until my later years, right? So I say that to establish that I knew nothing about the Philippines. Didn't know history, didn't know culture, couldn't even understand the language, couldn't even tell you what the language was called. Now I can tell you it's Tagalog, right? Then I open up YouTube.
Right.
And I just watch one thing. I don't know whether it was about real estate or something, or politics, or a favorite band that I knew and liked, but it was a Filipino band.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I get all this stuff. And more importantly, I start seeing all these influencers locally in the Philippines and foreigners going in there. And now, without having to spend the bucks to fly over there, and then, try to say, where do I go? What do I, I'm in the hotel, now what do I do? I watch these videos and I see the Philippines.
Right.
And I fall in love.
Yeah.
And now I know where I want to go, what I want to do. I start hearing the language, and now I can speak the language.
Yeah.
Now I can understand everything that's happening. And now I've dived into the history, into the culture and stuff like that. And arguably that probably would have still happened because I already at the time was interested in, so what am I? Who am I?
Right.
Culturally. But it probably would have taken 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Because there's almost no information.
Right.
But YouTube being made on the fly, these travel YouTubers, travel vloggers.
It makes it accessible. Yeah.
It makes it accessible.
Yeah. And and again, I'm not claiming I'm famous or anything, but I get recognized in public occasionally, like a few times, like maybe like 12 times a year or something. So like once a month, someone will be like, oh, I've seen your podcast or something. And it's like, I have 24,000, 23,000 subscribers right now. It's not a lot of people, but it's like, wow, it's like, that's a lot of people, And it's like, wow, the more that I do this, the more it scales up and the more it grows. And it's like these are real people that I'm having the chance to talk to. And the reason I encourage people to make YouTube channels or to go on social media and do anything, because it's like if you want to work in comics or if you want to work in video games, you need somebody to approve your artwork, and you need to pass through a gatekeeper to even have the chance to put yourself in front of people, which it's incredibly competitive. Whereas on YouTube, you could just do it, and now 1 million people will see it. It's like this podcast that we're doing might get 20,000 views, it might get 10,000 views, it might get 5,000 views, it also might get 500,000 views. And it's like I really do believe if someone tries for long enough and if they try for hard enough, eventually they'll be able to make a video that gets 1 million views, and then that becomes a business. That becomes like the way they can like interface with the world and talk with people. And they didn't need to get anyone's approval to go ahead and do that,
Yeah, there used to be other what I call playgrounds, because the creative world needs playgrounds so that young creatives can refine their skills and play around, right? There used to be, if you remember at MTV, Liquid, was it Liquid Sky? It was this, they were looking for content. They were blowing up, right, with videos, music videos. And so they were trying to get into content, and that's where, Real World started and stuff like that. And so one of them was, I think it was called Liquid Sky, Liquid TV or something like that. And basically, they went around to creatives and said, hey, you guys got any ideas? I mean, in animation or in short live action. And, if we like an idea, we could give you some seed money to start it. If we really like what you're doing there as you're developing, we'll give you more seed money. And then we'll broadcast it on here to see if people like it and stuff like that. So that was a playground for people to play. People don't remember in science fiction, all of the big wigs, Frank Herbert, Isaac, everybody. Back in, I think, the 30s, 20s, 40s, there were science fiction magazines. Yeah. And so you could be an aspiring science fiction writer and submit stuff to them. If the editors liked it, they would print it. And if readers fed back to them, they'll ask you for another chapter. And another chapter. And so that's how a lot of the big name writers that we know of today, that's how they busted their chops.
Yeah.
That's how they learned the craft. There needs to be more and more playground. And I think right now some of the only really existing playgrounds, because everybody wants to covet the new thing and stuff and keep it to their selves, the copyright and trademark. But I think YouTube is it.
It's amazing, man. It's incredible. And it's like, I don't know, again, it's that accessibility to your audience and your audience's accessibility to you. It's like the market's there and people are interested in watching your videos. Somebody needs to just make the video, you know? And again, that's the hard part. That's the hard part of just starting. But I mean, when I look at like Image Comics or, you know, like Todd and you and Jim and Rob and all these people who helped found comics, it's like you guys are the titans of the industry or whatever. But at the time, you were just kids. Like to the people running Marvel or DC or whatever, you were just like the punk kids, new on the block doing this stuff. And you were like, again, there's no credibility or no reason, at least at the time, where somebody might have thought, oh, right, they're trying it, like seriously. But then just by doing it in the right way, trying to actually connect with the audience, doing it in a way that's empathetic towards people, that's what allowed you guys to become the status quo in a certain sense.
Yeah, you know, I always look back and you're exactly right in the timing and the context. If they thought that we really understood the craft and we were really there with the reins on it, they would have offered us packages to keep us there, to keep the audience there. But they knew we were going to fail.
Right.
Because just look at us. We're just punk kids.
Right.
Just listen to us talk. Well, we're stammering most of the time.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I got seriously. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But even again go back to that sickly little, you know, Scorsese at his window. You come in and, okay, let's say your best friend turns out to be this time traveler and he's from the future and he knows this little Scorsese kid's going to grow up to be a big creative.
Right.
You're not going to believe him because all you know is he's just a scrawny little kid that can't even put a sentence together.
Right.
But that's not what's important. What's important is here.
Yeah. Right.
His imagination.
Yeah, I know. I have a stutter and I have pretty bad anxiety, and it's like, man, like this is weird for me. You know, like making a thing that gets, you know, even 1,000 views. It's like, wow, it's crazy that people choose to consume this thing, and it's like you know, the thing that really pushed me over the edge to try to do something was like going and meeting successful people and being like, really? You know, it's like that's it. You know, it's like, and seeing behind the curtain and being like, oh, everyone is flawed. Everyone has something behind them that causes anxiety. And it's like, I think the people that are discouraging are almost like doing it to protect themselves or doing it in a way to just like, you know.
Well, they're looking at it like the way we started this. They're looking at it as what they want to feel it really is.
Yeah.
And they're keeping a blind eye because they're right there. They could see to what it really is. I mean, you know, like, you know, Andy Warhol has done a lot of interesting, cool, popular things. But if you study and look at all the videos of him, he was just shy guy that latched onto, well, if I do crazy things, people pay attention and I could make a living off of that.
Right.
You know, and that work that folded into, I forget what that New York artist's name was, who his whole gimmick was he didn't actually paint.
Oh yeah.
He paid people to paint.
Yeah.
And he just instructed them. Again, it was what people think this is, that it's just this God-given thing that can be absorbed by other people and it's contagious or something like that. And it's, you know, it's innate. And so, but like when we were starting this, no, everything is learned.
Right.
Did you take the time to learn? Did you take the time to study people? And did you take the time to ask why and figure it really out? And then, okay, I could use that in this story. I could make this story that I want to do more connecting to an audience and more real to an audience because I made my characters do this, this, and this. Yeah. You know, once, just like in the Pixar thing of them in conversation explaining a story, when your eyes start to glaze or you start looking at your watch, I know I've lost you.
Yeah.
And so I know that there's no point in that part of the story. It's not clean enough.
Right.
It's not, I haven't dug down deep enough. And it's really gratifying that I go back to this, to the storyboard or to the desk and I figure it out. And then I say, even to the same person that was glazing off at 5 minutes, and they don't glaze off until 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, I failed at 10 minutes, but I figured out how to get past that 5 minute mark. I was never able to get past that 5 minute mark and stuff like that before. And it's just going that extra step and not stopping.
And not everything is going to be a home run. I think that's the important thing. So again, using my YouTube channel as an example, I did a podcast with Dan Norton, and that got like 55,000 views, and I was pretty proud of that. And then the video immediately following that got like 800 views, and I'm like, and I felt really discouraged by that. And it's like, I'll fail if I don't do another video, Yeah. It's not like I failed because I made a video that no one wanted to watch. I could be like, oh, the thumbnail and title sucked, or the editing was wrong, or it's just that the video, that my audience just doesn't care about that, even though I might care about it, And it's like, and it's a constant exploration of being like, okay, this worked here, why? This didn't work here, why? And trying to actually ask yourself that question from an objective perspective to be like what can I actually change about this that's within my power?
Right.
Like for me, as I'm, making more podcasts, the things that I have levers to control over, it's like I can control the production quality of it. So the sound quality, how it looks, how it's lit, all that kind of stuff. I can control the presentation and the packaging of it, the thumbnails and titles and the editing. But beyond that, 99% of it is out of my control. And I just have to okay, I'll try this and, and just keep going, kind of hoping. But.
And underneath the brilliance of YouTube is that you can get that data.
Yeah.
Like you said, one video blows it away and then the next one barely hits a mark. Right. But you don't quit because that one that blew it away and the other ones that even got close to that point too. Right. So you got engaged into knowing, let's go back old school. We never knew. The only reaction we got was from the editor.
I'm guessing. Yeah, it's like
I mean, and if we got letters, it was like what 2-3 months after,
right? And
we're now on the second next storyline,
right?
And we might have forgotten that storyline, so it doesn't really immediately connect that they connected. So you can't collect that data,
right?
You can't know exactly what you just got to keep.
And it's harder to start that conversation with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, for that video that got 800 views, I went through a couple days ago and I changed the thumbnail and title for it. And the video isn't doing great now, but I saw that, so it was flatlining on viewers for like 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. 0 people were watching it. And then I changed the thumbnail and title to it, and 12 more people watched it after flatlining for 3 weeks. And it's like, okay, that's something I did that had a direct control over this thing doing better or worse, and I think those analytics are the only thing the analytics allow me to do is just justify putting in the work.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's like whether or not I have those analytics, I still have to do the work to try,
Right. And that goes back to the very beginning. How do you keep that energy up? Right. And YouTube is brilliant in that, allowing you to look at that analytic to see, hey, I did do something right here.
Right. Well, and again, I think it's always just about the enthusiasm for whatever the thing is. Because you'll see people who, again, do things that I'm like, I'll perceive from the outside as being like, oh, I don't like that. That's not interesting. But then I'll see, oh, that made $50 trillion or got 50 million views. And I'm like, oh, okay. There's something that I don't know. This person is just making something that they care about. And I'm a big fan of Rick Rubin and his whole thing. And he was talking about how someone has a choice between something that is financially more efficient and more security, or something that they have more interest in. Always choose the thing that you have more interest in, because you're going to ask more questions to eventually lead to that success. Something that I've been talking a lot about is like the idea of doing doodles in the margins of your math homework in 3rd grade. Like in the moment, that teacher, the real advice to tell that student is to go and do their math homework, you know? But if you carry that through 20 years, that person becomes an amazing artist. Maybe they're working in comics or games or movies or something. And, you know, in hindsight, them doing more doodles in the margins in their math homework had a bigger effect on their career than the actual math homework itself, you know? And in the moment, the advice anyone would give to that student is to just do your math homework, you know? And I think carrying that into our own lives, there's so many instances where it might seem like a waste of time to go and do something, but you have to have faith that your interest and the thing that you're doing will be able to be carried through to some eventual conclusion to where it does actually have an audience for it.
Yeah, and I'll take that even a little step further. You've got to psychologically do the interview right, but if you interview a lot of successful creatives, no matter what field they're in,
Yeah.
what you'll find is not a direct correlation or coming out of their mouth said that math helped me.
Right.
But what you will eventually get is something along the lines as, while I was studying anatomy, or while I was studying story structure, or while I was studying how personalities develop and what happens to them later on if this or that happens, I started noticing patterns.
Yeah.
And that's all math is.
Right.
Is the recognition that there's patterns out there in nature.
When there's patterns within reception of things too.
Everything.
I'm sure I'm sure that there's like a math or like a logic to designing a cover that people will pick up, you know, and it's not necessarily about the best drawing or the best anatomy or whatever. And, but it's like, I'm sure that if a character is larger on a comic book cover, that is better than if a character is much smaller, you know, if it's about a character that you want to sell. And I think it's the same thing for YouTube thumbnails. It's like there's like fundamentals of psychology. Like there was one video I did where, again, it's just relevant for the conversation, but it was underperforming. It was like 9 of 10 of my latest videos in terms of views. So it was one of my least performing. It was a bad video. And it's because the thumbnail was this guy, the person wasn't the focus of it. You know? And then I changed it to a thumbnail where the person was a focus of it, and they're, you know, doing something in the actual thing itself. And now the video is like 3 of 10. So it's at like 7,000 or 8,000 views now. And it's like that little change was the thing that ended up leading to thousands of more people consuming it. And it's like in hindsight, I'm like, oh, of course that's the way it works, you know? But I guess I wouldn't know that unless I'm experimenting with stuff and trying things out all the time.
Right, which is why, going back to a little bit of a conversation where I lamented the fact that there's less playgrounds for young creatives to develop and explore and reinforce that they are creative. You know, like I constantly tell this story that, you know, I go to San Diego Con and I meet Carl Potts, and he takes me in, and years later I find out that most situations like that are, because you never come in 100%.
Yeah.
You always have 5, 10, 20, 50%, whatever, to develop still. And so the editors they're running a company.
Right.
So they don't have the time to hold your hand. So what you always get is, hey, this is great, man. You know, you should keep at it, and show me new stuff next year.
Right.
That's a whole year.
Right.
That's a lifetime for a kid. Carl took my number and every month bugged me for new things. And then after a while, he figured out I couldn't tell a story.
Yeah.
Gave me the 5 C's of cinematography.
Right.
Forced me to learn. He helped me push me. He was my playground.
Yeah.
And then to really enhance it, when I get into the X office, Louise Simonson is my writer.
Yeah.
And she calls me all the way from New York to California, and she goes, Whilce, what do you like to draw? Yeah. I'm a fucking nobody. Yeah. And here is God asking me, what do I like to draw? Yeah. And I stammer out the ninjas. Right. And she goes, oh, great, I could do like Cyber Ninja. Cyber's really cool. I'll turn them into Cyber. And then what else do you like, Whilce? And stupid 21-year-old kid. Japanese girls.
Right.
Bob, you could have a girlfriend. Let's make him Japanese. In fact, that's my in into the Yakuza. Her dad is the Yakuza boss.
Yeah.
And later on, she explained it to me that she learned that if she can find something interesting in what I think is interesting to draw, we're both at 200%.
Yeah.
You know, it's not because she's God, she can dictate to me and I've got to keep up. She understood, no, we're creators. This is the best way to go. It's the best way for me to prove to her that I could one day get to her status, and it's worth the time for her to hold my hand. Or I could prove that, you know, no, I'm a non-thinking creative who just do whatever everybody wants to, you know, ask. And that is just so important. And I think that's one of the things that YouTube does. And an interesting thing you gotta say is that also means taking in the good and the bad.
Yeah.
But if you don't have an open playground where the farthest people can come in with bad stuff, or people could unknowingly come in with bad stuff, but the audience is the democratizing part of it. They could say no, you know? And so the Star Wars comes out, the Jaws comes out, you know, because there's an open playground to allow that to happen. So like you and I can come up with these horrible trends on YouTube that became momentarily popular because everybody thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah. You know, but they eventually all die out for all the really cool stuff. Right. And all I mean, like, look at all the interviewers. I mean, there was a time, I don't know what you think about it, but politically, years ago, you know, what's his face? Joe
Rogan?
Yeah. He was like, oh, he's just this you know, shill.
Factor guy.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and he's a conspiracy guy, you know? Yeah. He's not, his feet aren't planted on the ground. Yeah. But then when you listen to people that you respect, actors or creatives and politicians, and they tell you about the interview with Joe. Yeah. They go, oh, it's amazing. You know, most of the stuff that was cut out was Joe asking actual real questions that I, you know, struggled to answer, but because I hadn't worked out my thoughts on it. So meaning it was a new question to me. I could paste in this answer here and there like that. And then now he's got this reputation of actually being somebody who thinks.
Absolutely.
You may not get in line with his politics, or he can go off the rail sometimes with some of the new conspiracy theorists and stuff. But overall, he asks why.
He's asking questions, right? Yeah. That's the reason he's popular, and because he's empathetic and he's relatable, you know. And like I had so 2 podcasts ago, I haven't released this one yet. I had the guy who did the logo for the Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And we were talking about a lot of the same stuff. It's just like yes, and you just try and you see what something is going to be, and you just hope that it has an audience, you know. And I've heard Rogan talk about his conversations, like when he was first starting out, he'd have people, his friends, walking out, and he'd overhear them, and there's recordings of them saying like, "What is Joe doing? These are getting no views. This is all embarrassing and really cringy." But now it's become the most popular podcast and one of the most popular. That's the new news. You know, that's how people learn about what's happening in the world, or learn about Bernie Sanders or some famous scientist. You know, Ken Burns was on it recently.
You know, we have a history in America of that wise guy, that wise old guy. You know, back in the day, at one point it was, what's his face? He was a country dude, and a lot of times he's espousing his complex ideas of things. Will Rogers. Okay, so and he'd do lasso and stuff like that. And then you go into comedy, and Red Skelton had that thing too. Right. He was a vaudeville comedian, and it was funny, but if you really look, he was actually trying to work societal thoughts out. You go to early Charlie Chaplin. Yeah. He would do The Tramp, and then he would do, a lot of people forget, the Rich Drunk. Yeah. You know, and then he found out that everybody's paying attention to The Tramp. And so he goes, hey, I could use The Tramp because he is from the lower economic side of the country. I could talk about poverty. Yeah. I could talk about struggling. but still make everybody laugh. And then later on he goes, I got such an audience and people will listen if I make it funny. I'm so pissed off about what happened in Germany.
Right.
Let me make his Hitler piece and stuff like that. Yeah. And so we have this history of these characters that are Old Spice people to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, and now Joe Rogan and some other people are taking it. For a while, it was late night host shows, right. You know, and people didn't understand this, that it wasn't just this guy that nobody knew. It was Johnny Carson. Watch the Brad Pack. He's there. He's buddies with them. So all these guys are people that everybody knows, right. And everybody will open up to, yeah. and talk. And so, yeah, late night, not late night, but whatever you call it, you know, where right. Joe Rogan, that space, that is needed in the country. And I think he's gotten so big now that we don't have a lot of that, but there is him. And I truly believe, and I'm not a Trump guy, but I truly believe Trump saw him and said,
that's how people are actually getting their media. I'm not a Trump guy either, but I think like that's part of the reason he won the election. Yeah. Is because he was able to connect with people in a real way. You know?
Yeah, he heard from Joe and his guest and his audience where people's fears were.
Right.
And then, you know, this is basically what Trump does is, you know, he takes fear.
Right. Pushes it. Yeah.
And he pushes it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I guess, like with all this stuff, it starts out as something that's like, it starts out small. You know, it starts out as something that doesn't really seem that important in the moment. And the reception of it for things that end up becoming incredibly popular in the moment is not even a thought. You know, I visited Walt and Wheezy last month. They have a drawing from Walt and over there, and I was talking to them about like what it was like working with Jack Kirby and Stan and all those guys making all their iconic characters back in the 70s and 80s and for this stuff. And they were saying it was just work. Like they thought that any day now we're going to be fired and the gravy train is going to end. We're going to have to go pour concrete or something, you know? And then it never did. But it's like, you know, there are stories like Cable is a very popular character. Josh Brolin played him. And then, you know, Walt's, like Thor run was like the first Thor movie, you know, that pulled from that, and they had to rebuild all this stuff that they've done. It was just them doing their work, you know, and it ends up becoming and having this huge life that they couldn't have expected. But the important thing there was them just like enjoying doing the job, you know, and just doing things that in the moment were kind of dorky or not the coolest. But.
Did they talk about the fact that, because I vividly remember the X-Men years, in the beginning of the Image years, and the Image years showed that there was an audience, but it was kids.
Yeah.
Okay. It later on morphed into the rest of the country and then the rest of the world. But in those beginning years of Image and in all my years at Marvel before that, okay, I got this idea. Yeah. Okay. I got this idea of a psychotic superhero. And so imagine an old middle-aged Sean Connery. He's gruffy and, you know, he's the guy that like Clint Eastwood will yell at you to get off his lawn and stuff. And the world now is really bad, and there are these thugs have turned into mutants, you know, to bring it into sci-fi. And the name I have for this character is Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Go back in time to Frank Miller walking to the office and telling his story. Batman wasn't selling at that time, and so it was, if people don't like it, we'll just change it back to Batman next month.
Yeah, right.
There was this openness,
right,
to do shit.
It wasn't precious. Right?
Yeah. Frank goes to Daredevil. It's not selling nobody remembers him beyond the Gene Colan years. And he's got all these ideas. Yeah, Frank, just shut up. Just do it.
Right.
And he does, and it's this, it's
massive, right?
It's massive.
Yeah.
Right. That is what's now missing today because everything is precious.
Yeah.
Because everything can make $1 billion.
Right.
Back then, nobody cared. If you have an interesting idea and you can get one editor interested, okay, that editor will give you approval.
And there's no glory. Yeah, right. There was no glory. Like if you made this thing, you're not going to become a celebrity. It's just, you're doing your job, you know?
And like I said earlier, if it was starting to become successful, you wouldn't find out till like 5 years later.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And it's had 5 years of growing crazy and you had no idea that it was that.
Or even crazier, Guardians of the Galaxy. You don't know for 30 years, 40 years, or whatever, whenever those characters were made. It's like, that movie, obviously one of the biggest movies of the past 20 years, and it's just out of nowhere, you know? It's like no one could have expected that.
Yeah, and see, I understand Scorsese's superhero roller coaster thing.
Yeah.
Because here is an acclaimed film director, multiple Academy Awards. Everybody is teaching some of his movies. And here he is trying to make The Irishman.
Yeah.
And he says it took 10 years to get money for it.
Right.
Why? Because everybody only wanted to make superhero movies.
Yeah.
So he wasn't saying, what the fuck is this? He was saying, wait a minute, there's other things happening.
Right.
You know?
I'm still going to do this.
Yeah,
right.
And he understands with all that experience that if the field isn't open enough to, hey, let's do this space opera. What do you mean, The Days of Our Lives in Space? Or this alien movie? What do you mean science fiction never works? You know, it's about a bug and you're trapped on a spaceship. Yeah, this is a cheap movie, that whole thing of filming in one location only.
Yeah.
You know, if the field isn't open enough like that, those little things can't get in there and blow up.
Yeah.
They will be gatekeep. They wouldn't even get into production. They wouldn't even get them pre.
Right.
And that's what Scorsese was complaining about. And you could see that. Like this is off topic, but ever since I watched it a couple weeks ago, I've been trying to understand it. For about 5 times, I tried to watch Black Mirror throughout the last 2 years, right? And couldn't. And finally, I just, sometimes I just get it. I force myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching, like this one episode, I think it's in the new season. It's in black and white and it's about an apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
And, these 3 people are being chased by mechanical, AI dogs. It's beautifully shot.
Yeah.
The characters are real great, but it goes against all my understandings of story and creating story, because it never explains where these dogs come from, right, and why are people seemingly separating themselves out logistically from these, and are they really separating themselves? Where is this other place, and is it safe? What happened here? And I started reading up on it, and the reviews I got was that a lot of the audience, or most of the audience for Black Mirror, what they just want is a video production that confirms their world ideas that the world is fucked up.
Yeah.
They don't want a story. Right. They don't want it complete. They just want it to be confirmed, their negative thoughts of what's happening.
Being cynical. Right?
Yeah,
right.
Have you watched?
I've seen some episodes. I think it's a little bit self-indulgent.
Yeah.
It's like Catcher in the Rye or something. A little bit. It's like fuck everybody and fuck this shit and all that. And I understand it. It's like Fight Club is similar. I like Fight Club.
Yeah, but see.
Yeah.
There are little details that bring the story around.
Yeah.
Once you get that character is not real. It's just a cutaway personality from the main character. Then it makes it, but a lot of the Black Mirror doesn't even do that. Like there was this one where they're envisioning a world where dating was algorithmically controlled and the main computer matched you with people and
Yeah.
learned who you were and finally, and so there's a conversation in the middle of that where the person wonders, and it's a common thought that's been in society for a while. What if this is all just Matrix?
Right.
What if this is all real? And so it gets in where they're going to get out. They're going to get out. They do the Empire movie thing. They climb up the ladder, and then all of a sudden everything blurs out, and yeah, it is the Matrix.
Yeah.
But that's the end of the movie.
Right.
There's no what is the Matrix? Why is it the Matrix?
Right.
Okay, now that they're out of it, did they win? Did they lose? Are they just going back into it? You know,
it's like Lost or something. Yeah, right. It's they answer a question, but then they make you ask a trillion more. And I mean, I think it might just be like little, vignettes of a story or something, or like tinges for a story. It's like, I wouldn't have predicted Love, Death, and Robots would be as popular as it is now, but I love it. I love it. It's super fun, and and I think it's that like little giving someone a chance to just do an art project, Yeah,
that's what I love in this. It's art project. I mean, this new season. I mean, I'm pretty sure you were the same thing. Right. 3 minutes watching CGI Red Hot Chili Peppers sing a song, and you're waiting for. Okay.
What's going on? Yeah, right.
And then you're going, it's almost over because you can see the time.
Yeah.
And you're going, seriously? This is an MTV?
This is it. Yeah. well, and it's like some of them are really bad. Yeah. Some of them I just do not want to watch at all. Others I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Like Zima Blue from the first season. I love that one, and I think it's like that. I'm sure if the people putting out also know which ones are good and bad, but it's not like they're putting them in anyways, like I don't like the werewolf one from the first season where it's like, werewolves turning into soldiers, and it's just like, that's odd. It seems.
Or what about that one where, there's that filming technique to make everything real life look like it's just little toys?
Oh yeah.
The first one was, wow, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And okay, I understand that meme of, at the end, everything doesn't mean anything and,
right.
Go bloop. And then the second one and then the third one is like.
I get it. Yeah. But again, it's like, I think that like, so again, it's going back to the messiness of creative projects. Like if you look at Dragon Ball Z or like One Piece or something, it's like great, amazing, culturally significant pieces of media, but also filled with filler. Tons of episodes where it's just, Goku charging an energy blast and then he misses and then he has to do another one or something, and that goes on for 2 weeks or whatever. But it's like, it's still important to the story, or it's important to the context of the story.
Yeah, but see, I take it a little step further because that's one of the things we're missing, because the majority of the new set Netflix series, 6 episodes.
Right.
Back then a TV show lasted 26 episodes a year, and so you get things where I'm here and then all of a sudden an old TV show comes up that I loved when I was a kid called Combat, and it's in black and white.
Yeah. And
I loved it because I was a kid and this was, guns and, military and stuff. And here I am watching it. And again, there's 152 episodes. Right. And I'm watching it and I'm going, yeah, I could bring up my childhood things. Wow, that was cool. And oh, wow, they were teaching how you to actually, go through a town and blah, 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 blah. And I look at it and I'm listening to it as a storyteller and going, damn. Because it was so popular, they had guest stars, major guest stars all the time. So he was a new person in the squad, right? So they had like a Frankie Avalon, who was a teen idol singer.
Yeah.
But he was kind of seen as the Italian, I'm riding the wave thing. And they write a story of a new soldier coming in who just got through boot camp, riding the wave, being gung-ho and thinking the war is gung-ho. And then the squad showing him what reality was. Yeah. Or them taking this character that was hypercritical and fearful of everybody and anybody. Yeah. And so everybody didn't want him because he wouldn't help the team out. He wouldn't, back people up and stuff like that, or go in and set up cover fire and stuff. He was just this lone guy.
Right.
And then so the team hated him and the audience hated him. But later on, you found out why.
Yeah.
These were actual deep psychological stories.
Right.
And the whole point was, okay, let's take all the different personalities in America, drop them into World War II, see what happens to them.
Right.
It actually was teaching. But I remember as a kid going, oh, cool, because it opened up with with digital. And I remember hoping it rained every day so I can put on my boots and go through the puddles. And then just seeing all the armor and stuff like that. I thought it was just cool, but it's actually deep.
Yeah.
And then you watch like Clint Eastwood's first TV series, Rawhide.
Yeah.
He's just a good-looking gunslinger. He's not the star, and he's barely in episodes.
Yeah.
But when he is, he plays his part. Imagine that happening today, and you have a young Clint Eastwood, has the stature, has the looks and everything. He would be the boss.
Yeah. Right.
It wouldn't be somebody who really has aged and experienced and really knows how to. The writing back then was, for me, just amazing. And that's where I learned a lot of the psychology of people.
Yeah.
And how things work without having to actually be one or having a friend who was exactly that.
Yeah.
And I think we're missing that. I think we could trace it back to like Brokeback Mountain days, not specifically that movie, but if you remember in those times, Brokeback Mountain was directed by Ang Lee, a Chinese guy.
Yeah.
That was a sort of superheroes. And so all of the American big directors were doing these action pieces.
Yeah.
And all of the serious drama Americana were done by foreign directors. And so I take it another step to today now. We have very few directors and writers in America that really understand psychology.
Yeah.
Because they never needed it. They're making the big bucks just doing this quote unquote fluff action stuff. And so, I mean, this is just off topic, but that's why I love Netflix, because I can watch all these foreign movies where they have the incentive to really try.
Yeah. Right.
And really understand.
I mean, Squid Game is a great example of that. You know, one of the biggest TV shows ever, really. You know, and it's the foreign directors. You know, and it's relatable. And I don't know. Again, it came out of nowhere.
But see, that's the most interesting thing. Specifically with Korea, they learn from us.
Yeah.
We just forgot.
Right.
I mean, if you go through Netflix, and it's not every Korean movie, but you go and read the little, what's supposed to be the tagline.
Yeah.
It actually makes sense.
Right.
You go to 99% of American TV series and, Bob and Bill go into the country because they're on vacation and bad things happen.
Right. That's kind of vague. Well, and I think there's a reason people are churning to YouTube, because it's not patronizing. It's not condescending. It's like, oh, this is an actual audience. It's not numbers, And I think there's a real danger if you get too into analytics or too on the business side, where you're seeing the people who are consuming your thing just as stats, versus them actually being human beings,
Yeah, I remember back when YouTubers were then being called influencers and making a lot of money and becoming famous, right? Do you remember that small period where all of them were having existential crisis?
Yeah.
Who am I?
Right.
I'm not this character.
Right.
I made this character. It came from me and it became popular. So I embodied it for my videos. Those guys are, hey, that's,
right.
That's not, I mean, it's interesting. You watch, that's why I love watching collabs, because then you see that, hey guy, and it's now somebody else's video and that other person's going, hey guy, and you catch glimpses of that other guy in the background and they're like,
right.
They're just boring, regular people.
Just being a guy. Right?
Yeah. And so the existential thing is everybody thinks I'm that.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Nobody recognizes me.
Right. Well, I know that entertainers in general feel that. It's like, if you're a famous comic artist, people only see your art. They don't see you, the human being,
Oh, yeah. I could tell you, I vividly can remember,
yeah.
you say Todd McFarlane, and you go, yeah, there was this thing that happened,
Yeah.
Todd was quiet back then.
Right.
But he learned that the audience wanted him
Yeah.
to do that, and then he saw it like a YouTuber, and just continued that.
Right.
And now that's his personality.
Yeah.
But you got to be really careful. And like you said, showbiz actors, that's the first case study.
Right.
Especially child stars.
Dude, I remember just going to Comic-Con and seeing people walk up to comic artists I know with a stack of 50 different issues that they worked on 20 years ago and being like, okay, sign this, sign all these, and expecting it for free as well. And it's which is fine, it's totally okay. It's just like seeing that person purely as a commodity, or a means to an end to sell stuff on eBay.
Oh, well, I vividly remember when some people started charging.
Yeah.
And then when CGC started, so you could just virtually in your mind think you're making more money because it's now valued. Somebody valued it for something. And so now everybody's getting a rush. And that was when the 50 stacks and 100 stacks came in. But I vividly remembered, if you remember in the very beginning of that, and there's this kid.
Yeah.
He's obviously like 7, 8 years old, and he's got 100.
Right.
And then you ask him a question. Oh, yeah, these are mine.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody paid you $20 to bring those up.
Yeah.
And that's now why there's all these different, like Joe. She will not let me sign anything that they say is not for CGC.
Right.
Because then we charge an extra for it. She will not let me sign anything that's taped.
Right.
Okay, if this isn't CGC, why is it taped? So take it out.
Right.
If they won't take it out, then we don't sign. Yeah. And it's sad that it's come to that, but you're right. Everything now is becoming this commodity,
Right. Well, and again, I guess like moving forward with that stuff, it's like maintaining that spontaneity or that ability to play while also being seen as like the Michelangelo or being someone seen as like a legendary person in some way. I think that's why so many people burn out or isolate themselves or, create this character,
That's why I think that it was healthy to have that buffer. Because when I was a kid, I read almost all of the Herbert Dune books.
Right.
There's 5 million of them. I remember at the time, most people's reaction was, everybody just thinks too much here.
Yeah.
Somebody does something and then there's whole paragraphs of what they thought of what happened and stuff like that. Now, for the geeks like me, that was great, especially as a creative, because you saw that Herbert really worked out their characters.
Yeah.
And he was showing you motivations for why a person did it or did do something or did it or did say something and stuff. But for decades, it wasn't anything that people thought was going to become anything.
Yeah.
And now, as beautiful as the two movies are, I'm on the other side of this. As beautiful as the two movies are, and they're hitting a lot of good marks, the emotion is gone.
I don't think you can make a Dune movie like in 2.5 hours, 3 hours. You just can't do it. It needs to be like a Game of Thrones or something, you know, with a lot of depth. And even then it's hard because you have to take, a season to do one scene where the Bene Gesserits are talking, explaining everything. And, I mean, maybe now since it's popular and Timothée Chalamet is behind it, but it's like...
See, I had the hope there because they finally casted at least a younger looking kid.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, as much as I like Denis, almost all of his movies, he doesn't search for the emotional side of things.
Yeah. The aesthetics of it. It feels like an art center portfolio for concept art, which is great. I like that. But it's like, it feels more of like a concept piece for what Dune could be versus the actual execution of
and I think eventually it's going to burn because a big part of the draw is him and his audience. And it is equivalent to a teeny bopper audience. Right. And he is cast in the first two movies as the hero, especially the hero that's going to save the day. He's not the dad. Right. He's the son, and he's going to make it right.
Right.
But for us that read the book.
Yeah. He's not a good dude. Yeah. Well, I don't know, but it's like I'm glad they've been made, you know, and in spite of like there's the version that I want it to be, and then the version that we got, you know, I'm sure there's some Lord of the Rings nerd who's following Tolkien since the 50s or something, that when the movies were made, he was just like, oh, this isn't it. You know, they should be sticking on this mountain and explaining every single leaf and all this stuff and the way that Tolkien would write. But it's like, you know, it is what it is, and it's made for the medium, you know?
Yeah.
Like a bunch of those concept artists that worked on Dune, they probably also worked on video games inspired by Halo or whatever else, you know? Yeah, I guess it's like, the more that I consume stuff and the more that I guess get older and have opinions about things, it's like I guess I'm trying to be like happy with whatever the thing is versus trying to be super cynical about it, you know?
Yeah. No. Again, you're totally right. And I've been guilty of some of those things. But you're right. You know, it can only be what it is.
Yeah.
But it is now a hyper time of that even before the movie comes out.
Right.
Oh, did you see that one teaser clip of Superman flying through the air? That was all fucked up. That was horrible. I could have done better special effects. You know, him.
Right.
Yeah. You know.
Right.
And then just going off of what was like 5-10 seconds.
Right.
You know, and judging the whole movie for that. Unfortunately, that's the audience out there now. They all think that they're creatives.
Right.
You know, it's like all the, you could go on YouTube and there's all these guitar guys and they could play, you know, Eruption as good as Eddie.
Right.
But they can't write Eruption.
Yeah. Right.
They can't write
That's the hard part. Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think, like, again, thinking of, I'm not envious of James Gunn's job because there's so many expectations around everything that he's doing now, you know? And I know that I liked Love and Thunder, but then Thor Ragnarok following that didn't perform as well because I think it's that pressure that hurts somebody's ability to be creative, you know, whether they're trying to appeal to an audience or the people who are funding the movie itself or just trying to like make something that appeals to everybody, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of Hollywood's bad symptoms is that it knows how to follow trends, identify and follow trends.
Yeah.
So you could track that. You could see Taika's first movie, and even though he's Taika already at that point, he doesn't, and he's admitted in 5 million interviews, he didn't really know anything about superheroes.
Yeah.
So he was basing almost everything on Chris's actual personality.
Yeah.
Right? And that jived with a lot of his quirky sense of humor. Yeah. But he wasn't really fearless yet in this genre. And so he half did Taika and half did what he thought maybe should be done story-wise, creative-wise, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to his second or third movie and it's now, oh yeah, you're God, when he goes into Hollywood upstairs.
Right.
And now do whatever the fuck you want.
Right.
Just be Taika to the nth thing.
Right.
And again, these guys don't know shit because they're not creative. They don't know, they haven't read a comic book, but they have a handle on the money.
Yeah, well, they also haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows either.
Yeah.
They haven't seen his movies. And it's like, if you ask Taika Waititi to make whatever he wants, he's going to make something that's extremely goofy, you know? And I don't know, I think it's always interesting to me hearing interviews of people like Oscar Isaac talking about his time on Star Wars and being like, you know, I bought a house. Harrison Ford, say a finger, show me the money. So, and yeah, I don't know. It's like there's the things that pay the bills that let you keep doing the things that are still creative.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, look at Shatner's personal journey.
Yeah,
He didn't want to do this.
right.
And for decades, he thought this was, I mean, he has that famous decades later, that spoof on conventions on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
You know, even at that point, he didn't get it. Now he's like the grandpa of it all.
Right.
You know, and he's changed his mind on things, you know? And again, that's one human nature too, but you know,
right.
it is interesting. And again, it goes in a left long turn. It goes back to, you need an industry that allows, that's elastic,
Right.
that allows these little things that I remember back fondly, because now you can pull almost anything up on YouTube, watching the Playhouse period on TV. So the beginning of TV here, where everything was still live.
Yeah.
You know, so Playhouse was like one of my favorite, Requiem for a fighter or Requiem for a heavyweight. And it's Jack Palance, young, but huge still. And the whole story playing out like a Broadway play where, you know, if Jack falls down and forgets a line, you can't stop. Somebody's got to help pick him up or ease him into the next line. And you just got to keep going. And everything has to be set up to cut into there. There's only, I think, 3 commercials out the whole thing. Only 3 breaks. So every scene had to flow into everything. And watching that is like, it's just genius.
Right.
It's just perfect. I mean, the timing, everything. And you could see they were not there, the production team going, fuck, I wish we could have commercial breaks and pre-film everything.
Yeah, right.
No, we don't have that technology yet. This is what we have, and this is how we got to do it because we want to do serious drama plays.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Right.
And you just do it.
Yeah, right.
You know? And it's just beautiful watching it happen, watching the actors. And it's fun watching a mistake. And then you see the other veteran actors fill it in and move it, push it forward. It's just beautiful. And I think today where everything is canned and you could, you know, because of Coldplay, you could rehearse for 2 days and then do it, but do 20 takes and different versions. And, you know, Coppola's done always, that was really good, but let's try a different thing. What's that different thing, Francis? Something different.
Right.
And then everybody's just trying to jumble up and throw,
guess.
Yeah, just guess,
right.
You know. I miss the days of, and it was Star Wars.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't responding to Harrison and everybody, all he was concentrating on, I think I got it. I think I got what I needed. And if I didn't get exactly what I needed, I think I could play it with it in the editing.
Yeah, right.
You know, and that is a true filmmaker.
Right.
You know, but see, that requires a vision.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing I really think is missing in comics right now.
Right.
You know, the ability to let in a scrawny British guy say Batman should be Dark Knight.
Right.
And as crazy as that idea is,
just try it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think when money gets involved and when, you know, people's mortgages get involved, things get really messy very quickly. And like, I aspire for this YouTube channel and this podcast to grow much bigger than it is right now. But I wouldn't want to do it in a way to where I start having producers or having people like telling me what to do or say or who to have on and stuff. And it's like, that's when it starts to get really messy, you know? I guess, like the things to me that have the most longevity, I guess, creatively that remain relevant to an audience are the things where they're able to maintain that like rock band or that garage band sort of mentality the whole way through. Like I know this happens all the time, but whether it be with big IPs in superhero comics or movies or video games, science fiction books, music, whenever it starts to become produced for the sake of the audience and not the person's interest, that's when it starts to lose its edge and it no longer becomes something that people want to consume.
Yeah, this is controversial, but I truly believe it from my experience. One of the rabbit holes we've fallen into is most people now think that they're creative. Most people can watch a prequel to Star Wars and go, no, he fucked up here and it should have done this. And so you see all these fan reimaginations or fan edits and stuff like that. But again, it goes back to that guitar thing. Your friend who's been playing guitar for 3 years now can, with these how-to DIY videos, going slowly through every phrase, they could learn how to do eruption.
Yeah.
And if they practice it enough, they could do it as good as Eddie, right?
Right.
But they can't write eruption.
Yeah.
right? And so I think that is the big loophole we're into, where too many producers are listening to the audience. Now, you have to listen to the audience to a certain degree, but you can't be slave to them, because the audience only knows what they like or don't like.
Right.
But they don't know, they can't tell you, because they've never seen it yet, if a space opera is going to be the next thing.
Right.
And so we're doomed to just rehashing things. And you look at that's where we are. Right. Everything is just being rehashed. Every popular character is now turning into a different character, but the same character, right. You know? And everything is just a retold story, and everybody's just looking back at what made it back then. Okay, let's just do the quote unquote modern version of that. That's the quagmire we're in. And that's why, like we said earlier, I, as a creative who's still on that journey to improve and know and really understand more psychology of people, I have to watch the Koreans.
Right.
I have to watch the Spanish. I have to watch the Philippines. I have to watch other countries do it. And fortunately for the audience, they're actually trying to do their versions of what America used to do.
Yeah.
You know, like when Sergio Leone started doing what we call spaghetti westerns.
Right.
You know, they were just cheaper westerns, and enticing and spending all their money on enticing one big Western star to go to Italy. Mm-hmm. You know, but in a lot of instances, especially with Sergio, they did it better.
Yeah, right.
Because they didn't have, pockets that could pay for 5 million different things. Right. They had to just do it on the spot and get something right.
Yeah, okay, and have faith that it's going to be good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like, again, it to me it's always a little bit. I feel like every podcast I've recorded is about the same thing, but it's like validating specific ideas, that even at the highest highest level of creative things, movies, games, whatever, it's still a lot of guesswork,
Yeah. And
I think, again, whenever I talk to people that are interested in developing their skills creatively, the advice is always like, do what you're willing to do, even if it's bad work. Like always like that. Never get nihilistic or never feel like you're behind for those opportunities that come up where somebody comes up to you in like a 20-person figure drawing class or a 5-person figure drawing class and asks you to like do a page for their zine that no one is going to watch, or no one's going to buy, because again, it's like those little things over time compound to the point where that does become the Beatles or the next Scorsese movie or any of that kind of stuff. And in the moment, again, it feels like lame or not, it doesn't have any actual potential, but the common through line throughout everything that has ever become successful from my perspective is that, attachment to that authenticity, and I think the thought there for a lot of people is to look at that and to be like, you're being idealistic or you're being, romantic about the idea of being creative. But I don't know. It's like if there's anything to be romantic or optimistic about, I think that's the thing to be optimistic and romantic about. And also, from what I've observed from things that have become successful, that is actually true,
Well, when you study history, one of the first things you learn is that you take any period, the 1800s, the 1600s, 1920s, 1940s, and now modern people at the time that they're modern, each generation, they think they're reinventing everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at arguably the hippie generation of the 60s and the early 70s was the most influential and most driven to change the status quo. They came up with the word demand and stuff like that. But if you really look back, what survived? Peace.
Right. Creedence Clearwater.
Yeah. Every generation, no matter how powerful they are, and no matter how united they are in trying to change the status quo, end up arguably around 2% really
You'll
change
meet
it.
people who don't know who the Beatles are. You know, it's crazy. It's like to some people that's that's history, that's music. To other, that's like.
But see, here's the conceit. Everybody now thinks everything is now. Like, you don't know the iPhone, you're a caveman. You're simple. One of the first things that you learn studying history, art, psychology, has barely changed.
Yeah.
We like to think that back in the day, especially like the 1600s, people were stupid.
Right.
They were as smart as we were. If they were stupid, how did they come up with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the French Revolution? Yeah.
There's a meme going around online where it's like, if you actually were teleported back, the fantasy is like, oh, I get teleported back to the 1400s and I could tell people how to make an iPhone. And the answer is like, I don't know. Like, it's like, explain to me how Bluetooth works. And it's like magic. It's essentially magic to me.
See,
it's like
that's one of the science fiction themes. So like, what that theme projects is, okay, let's say an advanced alien race lands.
Yeah.
Okay, if you remember Worlds, that's actually where the theme started. Because right there, these powerful things, they had these tripod things, they had these laser things there. But what killed them? A common cold bacteria.
Right.
The smallest thing. But back then it was just, an interesting, cool concept.
Right.
Science has proven that is reality. That's why when we get something that brings samples back from space, it's quarantined the hell out of it and nobody gets to it. I imagine, because of what you just said about the iPhone, that we're going to have this alien race land with this amazing technology, but then somebody walks around and accidentally pulls the power cord out, and they're not going to be able to figure out that. You just have to plug it back in.
Yeah, right.
Because they're just so used to it.
Right.
It working, because you go back in the quote-unquote Western days. We need soap. Yeah. Okay, let's go make soap.
Let's go kill an animal and get fat. Yeah. It's like,
the gun, the rifle's is kind of broken up. Okay, let's take it apart and figure out how to fix it. You're right. Nowadays, there's almost nothing. I mean, like, I hate this thing of, oh, look, for $20 you can get this gadget that will help you crack an egg.
Right. Right.
I was 30 years old when I figured out that I could use a suction cup thing to open up a bottle.
Yeah. Right. No, I'm pretty dumb, dude. I do dumb things all the time. Yeah.
No, but see, that's what's back then. You were taught that.
Right.
It was taught, but as you go into the future and automation and technology comes in, what is automation technology? It's helping you do things, everyday things easier. So science fiction projects it to the point where it does anything and everything.
Yeah.
And you don't know that you're a battery in a pod.
Right.
Well,
I think with all this stuff too, it's like there's so many other factors kind of going on around you that you can never really predict. I mean, something that I was talking to someone about is like, if you were born in the 1800s, you being a comic artist is just off the table.
Yeah.
That's just not even, like, you could be a blacksmith or a writer maybe, but definitely not a comic book artist. And so much of what we are and what we brag about and what becomes our identity is completely out of our hands, Oh, yeah. Maybe if you're born in 200 years, you're, instead of being a comic artist, you're like some AI storyteller in some way. And it's like, maybe you're a filmmaker. Maybe it's something that I can't even begin to comprehend.
Well, one of the most interesting things about studying history and then tying that with psychology is you find everything is a reaction to everything.
Yeah.
Like Elvis was a rebellious period. Okay. Before that, what do we have? The squeaky clean 50s.
Yeah.
And what was that doing? Because right before that, you had the Little Richards and the Chuck Berry, but they were too wild. They were black.
Right.
They were too crazy. And then you had the Pat Boones come in between that and tone it down.
Yeah.
And everybody listening to both of it going, I don't like this whitewash stuff.
Right.
And then, but hey, it is segregated times and stuff. And then this white guy comes out that can do all that stuff.
Right.
It's a react, everything. And then what happened after that? Oh, that's not crazy enough.
Right.
So the stones come out.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the thing that determines, I think success a lot of time is out of our hands, but the thing that I think determines someone's success is their maneuverability, their ability to just like, I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this. And the more friction there is to someone's ability to maneuver through their job, the harder it is to actually execute on something that makes a difference or makes something creative. Everything that I've ever done that's been successful has been it's been guessing,
Yeah.
like, oh, this works, this didn't work, this works, this doesn't work. And if you look at any massive creative project nowadays, like Fortnite is a great example, where version 1 of it was a zombie tower defense game. And it wasn't popular. And it wasn't popular for like 5 years until it became this battle royale thing that has changed the landscape of what it means to be a video game. But it was years of pivoting and being like, let's try this. Oh, let's try this instead. Let's do this. And without that maneuverability, you have just something that's like, oh, this is a game. Let's just try something. Let's build something from scratch, and you waste a bunch of resources,
And then you quit right away.
Yeah.
Because, it hasn't found a market. I mean, that's the exact same thing with me with DayZ. I remember when DayZ came out, and it was being touted at, hey, this is Arma.
Right.
This is the U.S. military training software.
Right.
Okay, cool. It was kind of boring, and the graphics were kind of low grade.
Right.
And when people got on there, it was a running simulation.
Yeah. I played it. Yeah.
He was just running.
You'd run for 3 hours and then you'd get shot.
Yeah. And then they introduced, they really then pulled out the mechanics and bumped up the zombies.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, so it's just trying to ride on Walking Dead.
Right.
But then you had like Frankie come out and realizing, okay, they spawn where other players are.
Yeah.
If there's not a player there, they don't spawn.
Right.
So now it's a mechanic.
Right.
And it's a beautiful mechanic, and it's made for really PvP.
Yeah.
So that you know where everybody is, and you know where to go and where to track. But it started as a running simulation.
Well, and DayZ was a mod for Arma.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It wasn't even the developers who made that. It's same thing with League of Legends. Like League of Legends was a Warcraft 3 mod first. It was Dota. And it became this much larger thing because the community of people around it made it that thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's like if everyone who ever made a successful game got it right, they're like no one's going to get it right the first time. You have to have that ability to shift and move around. And I think that like movie studios or game studios or people making comic books or YouTube videos, if they're constantly just trying to make home runs and Hail Marys all the time, they're just setting themselves up for failure.
No, see, I started games in very early on, but when it got into around, I remember Ghost Recon 1 and 2,
Yeah.
and I was going, man, this is tough. You had to peek,
Right.
and you had to peek correctly, because the snipers were just deadly.
Yeah.
And then I got Ghost Recon 3. Fuck, you could walk around dancing.
Yeah.
And and I started at that time being invited to game houses.
Yeah.
And, the interface people told me flat out, oh, well, the customers are complaining.
Right.
So we bumped it down, made it easier.
Yeah. Right.
And then the kicker was, most of our audience are kids now.
Right.
And so you get then the best World War II simulation, but you can see through walls.
Right.
You could float. You could see the whole map. And I started when this is always about simulations.
Yeah.
I remember this B-52 simulation where in big fighter craft, especially in the day, you had limited ampage in your battery. So if you wanted to get a green from the tower through communications, you had to turn the ampage to the radio and then do the call and get the green light. Then you had to turn that off and then turn the ampage over to starting up the engines. And so it's a very long, drawn out process to actually get the bird off the ground. I love that.
Yeah.
Because it was details and teaching me what it really was like. Right. But it then very quickly got into...
Right.
Yeah. and dogfight. I remember hours dogfighting in my F-16, and just almost not, almost. Now it's just beep beep beep,
Right.
and it always hits.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's that instant gratification, but it's like there's an audience for that, and also the realistic thing, And I think the common complaint with people with like Morrowind versus Oblivion versus Skyrim is that each iteration is becoming more user friendly.
Yeah.
It's like, and people, I guess, going from Skyrim to Fallout 4 is way more user friendly. They're taking out a lot of the edge of original Bethesda games, and then 76 beyond that is also incredibly, user friendly. And it's like it might make it's probably making more money, or it's appealing to a wider audience, but it's losing that core audience, and they're losing that inherent trust from the people who made their thing popular in the first place.
See, for me, that was such a great thing, because here it wasn't able to compete with a lot of the other bigger games, but it had something that the bigger games didn't have. That you're in a random building and you can get in almost any building.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that with the pretty games. It's all pretty because it's high end. You've taken all the bandwidth. So you can't actually climb up that mountain. You can't actually go in there. But in Fallout, you could go into almost anything. So you go into a random building, get through the code to get into that computer that's there, and then see this half-assed story of something.
Right.
And then days, weeks later, you're in another random building.
Right.
And then, oh, wait a minute, wasn't that Bob looking for Sherry?
Right.
And this is Sherry responding to Bob. And then you now get more of a story. And then you start figuring out all this stuff is not just getting experience point breaking to the computer. It's this added benefit of and it's not even a benefit. You don't get points for it.
Yeah.
Of putting these stories together and say, oh, according to these three stories, Sherry is waiting on the top of the hill.
Yeah.
So you go up there and you find little things of Sherry or a female skeleton. And again, you don't get points or anything. Right. You just get the end of the story.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. You figure out that this world is alive.
Yeah.
It's story.
I'm going through Red Dead Redemption 2 right now, and it's like I've just been going and exploring different abandoned houses, and it's like, oh, I saw one where the family was dead inside. Like, the mom was dead and the kid was dead, and just a bunch of dead bodies around. They're not marked at all, no story there. I looked it up. And if you walk in there and you look it up, it's like, oh, they died because of carbon monoxide poisoning, But it's like, it's just a really weird thing. It's like they're all rotted. It's really dark and bleak, and it's not anything more complicated than just that,
I hate that about the new Fallouts, where you get a quest put into your computer and all of a sudden you got a marker.
Yeah. That tells you exactly
what to do, where to go. Yeah. I love back then of, hey, wait a minute. Didn't I get some data 2 months ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I'm here now. I should check that out.
Right.
And trying to remember, oh yeah, it was in the comm tower. So something there. And then looking through there and trying to find, oh shit, there's all these orcs, and now it's, that's where I think Fallout really, other than the stories, which was the major thing, but I think that was the biggest thing that I fell in love with, that you could arm yourself. You can go to a trader, or you could just, scrounge, arm yourself, work up your gun, upgrade it, and then go to the boss, but you had to find the boss. You didn't walk into a room and doors closed and all of a sudden there's the boss. You had to actually find it. But I really love going, I got this strategy, and then, shit, it's not working.
Yeah.
Run!
Right.
And you could come back another day.
Yeah.
I really did not like that period where the room locks.
Yeah.
And you got to kill him. The only way out of it, the only move next is you got to win the boss.
Right. And it's simple, and I think it's patronizing.
It is,
yeah. It's like, I'm smarter than this, It doesn't have to be just this simple thing, It can be more complicated, and I'll still enjoy it.
I spent hours finding these creatures, and then learning how to get them to chase me
Yeah.
but outrunning them or jumping on something, and they will, they can't climb. So he's back then and getting back down, and have him chase me, because I know there's, in that crevice, there's 5 orcs.
Yeah.
And I can never take them on myself, and making these creatures attack those orcs.
Yeah.
And me just sitting back watching them tear each other apart. That's what you would really do in that world.
Yeah.
You're not going to take everything head on.
Right.
One, you're not going to have that energy, and 2, you'd probably be still wounded from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty. But again, when they went online with 76, they had to appeal to everybody and make it easier, and have all these
kind of grindy and microtransactions and all that stuff, which makes it might be a better business, but it's less memorable,
It's less memorable.
And I don't know, I think with all this stuff, I'm trying to keep it in mind for my medium right now is YouTube, and it's like, there's a version of everything that I do that's like Mr. Beast. I like Mr. Beast, but it's like, if I'm only ever trying to do stuff that's like clickbaity in that way, or even more sensational than that, trying to be negative or any of that, it's like, it might get more views, but it's like, it's painting me in a different light. And I'm doing that stuff to a degree, but trying to find that balance of like, as like a storyteller, trying not to treat my audience like they're idiots, trying to be like, oh, that's an actual person.
Yeah.
They're giving me their time. I'm going to try to give them a good experience,
Well, it always ends up to be a trap.
Yeah.
Because now the audience is expecting that out of you. But what you did before is ho-hum.
Yeah.
So you always have to get higher and higher. And I think just in general, what was creative out of all that was like OF.
Yeah.
Where now those girls are admitting that when they go on talk shows, they just say shit.
Right.
Just to get
clicks and views.
Yeah.
Wait, which is a tale as old as time.
Right.
But also, it's like a human psychology thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for Alice Cooper, him going into the middle of Piccadilly Square with, his nuts out, essentially, to get on the evening news. That's the same thing, Right. It's just different time periods.
But there's for me, because I study psychology and history, there's a slight difference. Like you could take, and there have been documentation of quote unquote the best gold diggers of like the 50s or the 1800s and stuff, right? In Elizabethan England, Europe. They were all conscious of what they were doing.
Yeah. Right.
They knew that this was the lay of the land, and they knew that this was my target, and I'm going to cater to that target and get that target. And I know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Now, because you make money, they try to fool themselves into thinking that, no, this is really something.
Right.
But again, you look at past history and it's not. And the interesting thing for me is that it is a continuation of history, like you said. Back then, you look at like Lawrence of Arabia or Passage to India, where you had those women. And if you look real closely, they were rich women that were married and had time on their hands. And the world was connected by liners and stuff. So they could explore the world. But they had the same mentality as a lot of society has today. Right? But it was only those rich women that were enabled because they were royalty or they were rich.
Yeah.
Now you can make money with no talent. And now that group of women that could experiment and explore this ones like that, now it's bigger. But again, because it's bigger, now everybody thinks, oh yeah, this is the right thing to do. This is what should be, and this is new.
Right.
And so they overlook that these women back there, this small group of women, they understood what they were doing.
Yeah.
They understood that they were making a choice.
It's
now, we think they think they're making a choice, but they're not looking at all the parameters.
Yeah.
They're just saying, oh, I'm making money. I could buy my own house.
Right.
And now if I can be really salacious, more people will click on me. And it's all a lie. Yeah, I admit it.
Right.
But it's just, like you said, clickbait. It's
complicated though, because I think that every single piece of media that I like is guilty of it to a degree, you know? It's like, I think that like looking at, like I'm a big World of Warcraft fan, you know, I played a lot of WoW growing up. When I look at the business practices for that game, it is predatory, you know, or it's like the way it's made is a little bit like, oh, that's a little bit not cool, you know, but it's like they're doing maybe a lot of the same things that everyone else is doing just to, you know, be seen in the world, you know. I think that like if someone is designing skins for League of Legends, even if they're not selling the skin directly, they're participating in a market where there's like somebody who's going into debt to buy that skin, you know, and it's like a really complicated, nuanced thing to where it's like, I really respect the company and I respect the art form, but it exists because there are these obsessive whales that, you know, that enable that business model to exist in the first place, you know, and enable it to have this fancy campus or this fancy presentation or to seem entirely ethical, but it's not, you know, it's a lot dirtier, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's more in psychological terms. It's fantasy. Yeah. But they truly believe it's reality.
Yeah. Well,
well, not reality per se, but that it's an end to it's a means to an end.
Yeah.
And the end is good. You know, like the whole thing of, okay, are you a means to the ends guy or are you an end to the means guy? You know, and most people now are, fuck what I have to do just as long as I get it, meaning as long as I could survive money.
Well, I think an interesting conversation too is like, you know, trying to throw out the art with the artist. Because I think it's very easy to go back and to look at even someone like Norman Rockwell and to criticize him and his family life or something, and to look past his art and be like, oh, he was a bad person, so you should get rid of his art. But it's like, it's more complicated than that. Because
See, that's the difference from us generations that grew up and all of a sudden there was the internet.
Yeah.
For us, it's this great tool. It took me a while to understand that the generations that grew up in the internet grew up with this mindset that, oh, I don't need to know tidbits, data, because I could just Google it. So if I ever need it, I could. So, but that makes some kind of logical sense. But what that means is you don't actually have any information here that can help you survive into the future.
Yeah.
You just know who Jay-Z is married to.
Right.
You know, but you don't know any important things. And so you don't have a grasp on reality.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I think people are, in general, more informed in some ways nowadays than they were 50 or 60 years ago. But it's like everyone has the same availability to knowledge, you know, where before you know, you had to go to the library or you had to have a card. You didn't have the chance to go to the library, you know?
Yeah. And I was one of those people that did that. But see, there is a big distinction, and where I draw the line is, look at this. And I think it's backed up by a lot of data points. And it's, I know some women now, and I knew them when they were kids, when they started to get on the internet. And so now you could search for anything, right? First thing most women will search for organically is basically, and they're not consciously really doing this, but they're basically searching female history.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is bad or can be interpreted badly, right? And so a lot of women that I know who grew up in that have grown up with a fear of men because of what history says, not because of what men are today, but because that. So my point there is the problem I have is for those generations, and there are smart ones, there are good ones, there are, you know, intelligent ones. But for the majority of people, because I believe in the 70-30 rule or the 80-20 rule, right? Yeah. That most people have access to that, can have access to that, know how to get that stuff. But do they know how to interpret it?
Well, and I think it's like, I think it's people are people. I think we're ultimately better off with people having more access to knowledge, for sure. I wouldn't say people are dumber or smarter.
No, they're not. But they don't understand. A lot of them, I don't know how many times I've seen conversations or arguments or debates, and somebody will bring up a point, and it's a phrase everybody knows. But the interviewers are now getting smarter and understanding, okay, a point is a point, but do you really know that? Are you regurgitating a point?
Yeah.
So they know now to ask a second and a third question.
Right.
And I don't know how many times I've seen them not being able to, and it's obvious that they just heard this and everybody's agreeing to it and they're saying it. And so they're saying it as if they know it's real.
Right.
And that is very dangerous because that means you don't actually do the research. Yeah. You don't actually find out what you see. Too many people, I believe in the scientific method, and the scientific method for a layman looking at that and not really looking at that, say, oh, look at all the times that scientists were wrong. Well, that's what the scientific method is.
Yeah.
This is what we know now, and this is what we think this means. And now we've got these 10 new points. Oh, now we think it means this. But to the layman, they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about.
Yeah.
And that's how I think people research today.
Right.
They have the answer in mind, or they know what's the correct.
A bias, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And they search for
things that validate that bias.
And they don't understand. I mean, like in the periods where I grew up as a kid, that is, like the 60s and the 70s are looked down at a lot. And I'll take even a innocuous thing, smoke.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody understands that if somebody started smoking here, we'd all smell it and we'd all be, oh my God.
What are you doing? Yeah.
But see, a lot of people today don't understand my experience and other people's experience who lived through that. Everybody was smoking.
Yeah.
I don't remember. And what that tells you is the human body adapts.
Right.
I did not smell that.
Right.
Did not feel that. I grew up as an immigrant on military bases. I did not feel segregation. It was there.
Yeah.
And it was really bad in some places. But it's like looking at the LA riots today and thinking that it's all of LA burning.
Yeah.
It's just 1 mile of downtown.
Right.
And again, that is not interpreting and taking the time to really interpret, okay, what does this really mean? Yeah. Who can we really, like right now, we don't have the information because Israel has this system of blocking out information. What is really happening there?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's very, very nuanced and complicated and multifaceted. And there's an entire history there that I'm not going to even pretend to.
Yeah.
But I think it's also like, with all this stuff, inherently people have to like start guessing at things and abstracting things. It's like when I drink a carton of milk, I'm fairly confident it's not going to have anthrax in it. But it's like at some point, maybe there will be. But it's like I have to live my life assuming that like the car I'm driving is not going to explode or the things I'm going to. So since I have to make those assumptions about things, I'm going to have to like look at things on a very surface level because I can't pay attention to most things. So inevitably there's going to be some political opinion or some instance to where I'm not well-versed or researched enough to really have a good decision on it. And I'm going to have to make a decision because it'll mean like my life will be easier in some way and all that, or I'll be part of my tribe in some more fundamental way,
Yeah. Well, but see, when push comes to shove, and I think you are part of this, you will be willing to say, I really don't know anything about that.
I don't know anything about anything.
Yeah. Well, no, but see, that's very important.
Yeah, for sure.
Because one of the other effects of having information at your fingertips. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, right. I don't know it this second.
Right.
But I'm going to pretend that I do.
Yeah.
Because once you turn away, I could figure it out. But are you really figuring it out? Or are you just looking at the first thing that maybe AI, ChatGPT or stuff like that? Because in my day and age, I'll give you two examples. In my day and age, when we learned about the Third Reich, of course, I always ask why. So I asked why. Why did that happen? How did it happen? It took me 40 years and I'm still figuring out different aspects of it. And throughout those 40 years, I don't know. I have some assumptions, but I can't back it up.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring it out. Nowadays, it's like you were saying earlier with, oh, well, see, this celebrity or this author, we can link them to the Nazis. Cancel.
Right.
Burn everything that they've done. Let's forget it. And that hurts me a lot because correct, nice, polite people don't write of Mice and Men or Tale of Two Cities. It's usually people that have gone through that or have collected stories of people that have gone through that and they were horrible.
Yeah.
And so they want to put it in some context. But a quote unquote right, regular person that you could trust, with a beer, they're not going to write any of that
It doesn't
stuff.
exist. Everyone is deeply flawed. I've made mistakes. Everyone has made mistakes. And I think, again, from like a creative perspective, you have to have the ability to forgive yourself in the first place. And if there's that thing where, again, it's complicated, but there's no ethical consumption under capitalism where if you have an iPhone, the lithium for the battery in the iPhone was mined in Africa by some child, or if you go to McDonald's, the factory farming, or if you have clothes on, there's some really complicated, nuanced conversation to be had about the ethics around your own consumption, even if someone's able to critique it. And I think the only thing, like even this podcast that we're recording, maybe there's some argument to be made that the energy we're using to record it, to upload it, could have been used to, save a baby or something, and something I talk about a lot, even on a more macro scale, it's like, well, if you are going to choose to be an artist, you shouldn't, because you could be a doctor instead. It's like, no matter what, there's some fundamental moral sacrifice that you're making just to live your life in the way that you want to live it. And there is a perspective where instead of doing this, we should be going and volunteering at a soup kitchen instead. And both of us have made the decision, the value judgment, to decide to sit here to chat for 3 hours instead of going and doing that because our values, for some reason want to talk about this stuff versus feeding the homeless, which is like, when you break it down that way, we seem like assholes. But even the people who are listening to this, who might be judging us for saying that, they're deciding to listen to this instead of going and feeding the homeless, right? Yeah. So it's like, no matter what, there's some fundamental sacrifice that you're making that is hurting someone else, And thinking about it from that perspective, you could just get into paralysis. Like, why do I ever draw a picture? Why do I ever tell a story? Why do I ever go do anything? Because it's hurting someone else, That's the kid that at 10 years old figures out we're all going to die. Yeah.
So why do anything?
Right.
And you cannot explain to that mind memories, experience, blah, 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 achievements. You can't explain it to them. And that comes out of, I believe, the concept of striving for perfection.
Yeah.
You take Hawkins, you take Asimov, you take Newton, you take anybody who we consider geniuses. They weren't good, perfect people.
Yeah.
There has never been a perfect human being. That is just who we are. We're organic and break down.
Well, and it's inspiring to hear that from people actually admitting that, because it's like, you could still do great works of art and still do things in spite of being extremely flawed. You could look at any person who's made a work of art in the past year and be like, oh, that person did this person did this. They're not as complicated. They're complicated. They're, like Taylor Swift is a good example, where she's made extremely popular music, but then she's, damaging the environment with her private plane, which might be a correct perspective, but it's like, okay, well, it's nuanced, it's like she does carbon offsetting, which, is another conversation to be had about all this stuff. And like, I don't know, something that I is bringing it back to the art education stuff. Like, something that I have a deep fundamental problem with is anyone artistically that is trying to teach someone else that claims to know exactly what the right thing is to do to become a successful artist. One thing that's like been strange to observe is like, people are paying $200,000 for degrees in concept art, whereas concept art was like a new thing in the 90s. And now there are these people who are experts in concept art, when not that long ago, it was like, oh, that's new, And now, people are claiming to be these like prompt engineers, or they're doing all this stuff to gain this arbitrary credibility, when it's like, well, no, it doesn't work that way. You can't just decide that you're credible. You're either making stuff or you're not,
Yeah. You noticed that medical theme.
Yeah.
All these medical people, seemingly medical people, water is not good for you. Water is great for you.
Yeah.
Breathing is not good for you. Breathing is good for you. Yeah. And first I laughed at it, then got frustrated because some people actually try to enact that stuff. And I figured out what I think is happening is, again, the scientific method is to theorize, collect data, refine your theory, put it into a paper, publish it, have other scientists try to replicate that, and if they can, trying to confirm it and trying to say, no, we couldn't replicate this. There's a factor you have wrong. And so we're going to do it again and again until we find out what that factor and adjust for that. So that means there's all these papers out there, and they're all open to the public, especially now because of the internet. So you have all these influencers reading this theory paper on proteins, but it's not proven yet. But it is written in scientific gobbledygook, so it seems like.
Yeah.
And so
it's like the double speak.
Yeah, I'm going to report this.
Right.
And people are going to think I sound credible.
Yeah.
But never pointing out this hasn't been proven yet.
It's an opinion.
It's an opinion.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. It's all complicated. We've been going for about 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, we better.
Yeah, I'm getting some text messages.
Oh shit!
I'm sorry about that.
But I love having conversations like that. I rarely have this.
I'm down to do this again sometime.
Yeah.
How should people follow you on the internet?
I'm just on IG under Whilce Portacio and Facebook again, Whilce Portacio too.
Cool. Cool. Alrighty. Well, thanks so much everybody for watching, and I guess I will cut it there. Sweet.
Oh, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that was fun. Oh wait.